Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. Ooh.
All right.
Oh man, that hurt my ears.
Prepubescent John?
Or
No, I was just doing what I normally do. That was me.
That was you.
And I don't know. That stopped me kind of in my tracks. But yeah, I think we already did Arnold on the last one.
Yeah,
Noah, that was a very obnoxious take on Edward Furlong's John Connor character, I assume.
Huh?
Except what you maybe should have done was like an Axl Rose, maybe? Like a Guns N' Roses. Like, all right!
Wait, why?
Because
why not?
They got Guns N' Roses all up in this movie.
I do love, though, that in this movie, and it's so dumb, but they make a Guns N' Roses reference with pulling a gun out of a box of roses. It's so dumb. I love it.
That's good.
Yet, before, I didn't even know that's what that meant. Like,
Yeah,
I had
I didn't
to,
either.
like,
That's real
research
good, though.
uncovered that, and I was like, huh. I never put that together, which shows that it was the perfect kind of subtle Easter egg.
Yeah.
But even without that,
It's just cool.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, he did pull a gun out of some roses.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm Reese. Across from me we have
David.
To his left.
Irina.
To my right.
John.
Noah, we said to use a different voice. You can't keep using your own.
Yeah. Podcast
Also
voice.
known as
Noah.
And bringing his wife a shotgun instead of a box of roses we have.
Hey, Jay.
And I made that up on the fly because I actually forgot to do that portion of the podcast.
You're welcome.
So thank you. The movie we're talking about, it's a big one, guys. Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Sometimes called T2 Judgment Day.
Sometimes just T2.
Something that the X-Men sequel kind of drafted off this movie's fumes. You remember X2?
Just in name, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, X2, X-Men United. That was the title of that movie. It's called X2. You don't remember that?
No, I do. I just that's all they took from it, though.
It's the best one of the original set.
I'm just saying, it's effective. Yeah, I would say, although I do really like the first X-Men.
It's good. That one's good too.
Honestly, similar trajectory here with your first Terminator.
It is.
Great. T2, I mean, I haven't heard what y'all are about to say yet, but from my own personal opinion, a bit of a step up. So yeah, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. That's the movie. It came out in 1991, directed once again by James Cameron. And this will be the first, or what's funny is this is the only sequel he's ever done that's where he directed the first film. Finally, he'll be ending that with Avatar 2 this year, The Way of Water. But we went over it on the last episode, which if you haven't listened to, I'd recommend listening to that one first, then going into this one. But James Cameron has also directed films such as Piranha 2, The Spawning, The Terminator, Aliens, The Abyss, True Lies, Titanic, Avatar, and the upcoming Avatar, The Way of Water, along with at least 2 or 3 more sequels after that. I think he has Avatar 2 and 3 already completely in the can, and they're both in post-production, which is crazy to think about.
Wait.
Movie stars, once again, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, Robert Patrick, Edward Furlong, Earl Bowen, and Joe Morton. It's written by James Cameron and William Wisher. Anyway, for those that are new to this show, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So, David, had you seen Terminator 2 Judgment Day before this episode?
I had seen it, and I remember the last episode, if you heard that one. If you heard it.
If you heard that one.
If you heard that one, you know that I thought that maybe I saw this one because I thought this was the first one.
You can stop now.
I can't. I just leaned into it. But yeah, I saw this one and thought it was the first one. Turns out it was the second one. It's, it's a whole thing.
That said, this is not the type of franchise where you have to have seen the first one to understand the second one.
Yeah.
It's very much its own thing.
It makes you appreciate Sarah Connor more, I think.
That's true. Yeah, you appreciate her transformation, but I think this movie isn't beholden to the original one, like, say, a Star Wars or, Lord of the Rings would be. AJ, how about you?
Yeah, it took me a while to finally see it because obviously it's, pretty well regarded, but, once I kind of took the time to do it, I saw it.
You saw Terminator 2, right?
Terminator 2? No, we're doing Edge of Tomorrow.
So how many times have you seen Edge of Tomorrow by this time? He's just caught in the loop. Still caught in the loop of the Edge of Tomorrow. No, we talked about Terminator 2. I hope you'll be able to watch Terminator 2 by the time your loop resets and you're once again watching Edge of Tomorrow. Irina. Oh, and no, AJ, had you actually seen Terminator 2?
Yes, I have pretty strong memories watching, I guess, the first 3 Terminators. So, yes, I had.
Irina, how about yourself?
Yep. I'm pretty sure we did have this conversation already, sort of, in the previous episode, but yeah, this is definitely the one that's more prominent in my mind. Definitely, I think because of the time it came out.
Yeah.
Since we were kids through the 90s and growing up, our mom or parents probably put it on. So yeah, it's definitely more familiar.
And finally, Noah.
I'm just an echo of Irina.
Can you say it in a more eloquent way than I did?
I am but a resounding noise.
Repeating.
All of space-time repeated.
That's
once,
not what I
twice,
meant,
thrice.
Okay.
She meant say more eloquently what she said about had you seen Terminator before.
Well, I thought
Terminator
she was
2.
just critiquing the
no,
fact
I didn't.
that
I didn't want you to say echo in a more interesting way.
Just say it like James Cameron would say it.
How does he sound?
Canadian, although he doesn't. He is Canadian, though.
Yeah, sound Canadian without sounding Canadian.
Like reference maple syrup, but don't say a or sorry.
Or oat.
No. Okay, had you seen Terminator 2?
Yes.
Talk.
This is way too much focus.
Talk as if you are currently eating a donut right now. A jelly-filled donut.
Yeah. Definitely not how James Cameron sounds.
I also am a cop, apparently.
Yep. Like donuts.
They are exclusive donut eaters.
Only donuts.
Okay, had you seen for the third time Terminator 2? I know you've seen it, but just say
yes, I've seen it. Woo! A long time ago.
Awesome. Okay. Yes, I've seen, and to round it out, I've seen Terminator 2 as well. It's one of those movies where
I've seen Terminator 2 too.
Wait, like
Sorry.
times 2?
You've seen Terminators 2
This
too?
is killing Reese inside. I can see his eyes
bulging.
You just see Arnold Schwarzenegger wearing a tutu right now.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't put it past him at this era because he was in movies like Twins and that one where he got pregnant. What's it called?
Oh gosh, that one.
Kindergarten Cop.
No.
This is not a tumor.
Shrek.
For my part, yeah, I had seen Terminator 2. Junior, that's what it was called.
Oh gosh, that movie.
Yeah, I had seen Terminator 2. It's one of those ones where I can't quite pinpoint when I saw it, but it's one of those, I don't know, movies that you grow up with, that if you're a boy that likes action movies, and girl too, I'm not gonna I think you saw it pretty young too, Arena.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely one of those formative action movies from my youth that maybe I saw at too young of an age. Who knows? But also I think it's it's on the tamer end of R-rated, but it still probably saw it too young. It's on the Matrix level, I think. So probably saw around when I was 10 or 11, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it quite a few times, although I haven't, like in recent, I haven't seen it a lot recently, but I've at least seen this film 10 plus times, I would say. Yeah. And it's weird with these classic movies like Jurassic Park and Terminator 2, my cadence of rewatching them has slowed down massively. And I don't know why. I think it's just because they're burned into my brain as these I know every frame of this movie. So I'm more likely to watch something that I haven't seen as much or something new. But I understand that's probably different with some of you guys. Y'all like Irina, I think you probably watch movies like Terminator and Jurassic Park a lot, right? Still?
Not Terminator as much, which I think I did mention this in the previous episode that this was on my list to rewatch soon, so I was glad that we were doing it anyway.
Cool.
Definitely Jurassic Park. I end up watching at least the first 3 movies regularly.
Yeah. I don't know why, but in my brain, I really think there's a strong connective tissue between this one and Jurassic Park. And
There's something
maybe it's because
about
they
them.
both do they're both known for like technological advancements. But in my mind, they're almost similar types of comfort food. This is like the edgier, this is like the bad boy comfort food, whereas or bad to the bone comfort food. There you go. Yeah. And Jurassic Park's just like dinosaurs.
You're right. You're right about that.
Jurassic Park
Park's
went,
just
a little more
dinosaurs.
wondrous, and this one a little on the bleak side.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, Jurassic Park's it's kind of a horror movie for a good half of it.
Yeah,
you know,
true.
Children's horror movie.
Yeah, especially if you're working IT. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Wayne Knight, man.
Yeah, but Terminator 2 definitely has a similar legacy to me that Jurassic Park does. Just 2 pinnacles of the 90s.
Yeah.
Or at least early 90s, I should say, where when I think of touchstones in terms of blockbusters, it's those 2 vying for that top spot. And ask me one day, it might be this one. Ask me the other day, it might be Jurassic Park that is like sitting on that throne of my favorite. But yeah,
They have an element of comfort to them as well. Like, even though Terminator 2 obviously has kind of a bleak outlook on where things are going.
Yeah.
There is that sense of when you're watching it, you feel cared for in a weird way.
It's crowd pleasing. I think that's what it is.
That's it.
Because no matter how bleak it is, it always has this air of like, you feel protected. Like you're not, nothing, it's never going to reach a disturbing level.
And that's because this movie is secretly about family.
It is kind of, it's like a dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
But
look at us. We're so quirky with our
Terminator is the parents
killing and going to mental hospitals. And
going to kill
whatever.
the leader or the creator of this new program or whatever. Anyway, I'm going on too long. This was supposed to be just me saying that I had seen the movie, and it went on.
It did.
With that said, David, you want to get the ball rolling on that call to action there?
Yeah. All right. Is this the right direction?
Could you do this in the... No, what I need you to do... be Robert Patrick as the T-1000.
Okay.
You have knocked on the door of, whoever. You're looking for someone.
Okay.
But your mission is, if this person has not given us 5 stars on Apple, you have to dispatch them.
Execute, yes.
Ooh, can we do this
He's a
every
good-looking
time
boy.
where you give him like a what is it called?
A prompt?
Yeah,
I
give
do.
him
This
a
is great for
prompt.
improv. This is great for my improv.
All right. Knock, knock.
Hello, sir. I have come to inquire about your podcasting habits.
Oh, what do you need to know about him?
Well, I see here from dispatch that somebody called the police over here because you didn't give a 5-star review to Franchise Killer Podcast. Is this true?
I could have sworn that I did. Franchise Killer, it's one of my favorites.
So you're telling me you like this podcast and you didn't give it a 5-star review?
No, I could have sworn I could. I
No,
seem to
let
have
me see your
misplaced
phone.
my phone.
Let me see your phone.
I seem to
Sir?
have misplaced it.
That was the sound of an aluminum spike piercing his head.
Okay, cool.
And scene.
And scene. Great.
Dang, he still didn't get that 5-star though.
No. We never will.
Grant, I think you were a little impatient.
Well, he's impatient.
You didn't even read Miranda rights.
In
or
other words,
anything.
he's gonna show up at your door, and if you don't have us 5-starred,
I'm gonna launch my
That's
hand
gonna
and,
happen.
and pretend to.
I didn't even have
No.
time to go find my phone.
he was about to capitulate.
you were like, give me
you were
your
like,
phone.
No. Death. No mercy from the Terminator.
All right, yeah, so the 5 stars on Apple definitely helps us the most in terms of going up in that algorithm. We also have a Twitter account, Instagram account, if you want to follow us and see what the latest goings-ons are.
I have that trouble all the time. Going on?
Yeah.
Ah!
Yeah, and yeah, we're on all podcast platforms. Obviously, you're listening to us already, so you are on your preferred platform, so no need to be concerned about that. But yeah, anything helps. Any form of just, as we've said, grassroots, like just, hey, if you got a mom, you got a dad, you got a relative who likes movies.
You
maybe
have a friend who drives a lot and needs something new to listen to?
Yeah, maybe shoot them a recommendation of the podcast. We would massively appreciate it. So thanks for listening. With that said, David, you want to give us that story?
I will.
Same make.
These were taken at the West Highland Police Station, 1984. You were there.
Same model.
These were taken today.
You have to let me see my son. He's in great danger.
New mission. Once, he was programmed to destroy the future.
You don't know what it's like to try to kill one of these things.
Now, his mission
Get down.
is to protect it.
Come with me if you want to live.
You're really real.
His loyalty is to a child.
Who sent you?
You did. 35 years from now.
And his enemy
He's a Terminator like you, right?
Not like me.
is the deadliest machine ever built.
Can it be destroyed?
Unknown.
This time, there are 2. Terminator 2.
In 2029, Earth is a wasteland dominated by the war between a malevolent artificial intelligence AI, Skynet, and the human resistance. Skynet sends back in time the T-1000, an advanced prototype shape-shifting Terminator made of virtually indestructible liquid metal, to kill the resistance leader John Connor when he is a child. To protect John Connor, the resistance sends back a reprogrammed T-800 Terminator, a less advanced metal endoskeleton that is covered in synthetic flesh. In 1995, in Los Angeles, John's mother Sarah has been incarcerated at Pescadero State Hospital for her violent, fanatical efforts to prevent Judgment Day, the prophesied events of August 29, 1997, when Skynet will gain sentience and, in response to its creators, attempt to deactivate it, incite a nuclear holocaust. John is taken in by foster parents. He considers Sarah's beliefs to be delusional and resents her efforts to prepare him for his future role. The T-800 and T-1000 converge on John in a shopping mall and a chase ensues. John and the T-800 escape together. John calls to warn his foster parents, but the T-800 deduces the T-1000 has already killed them. Realizing the T-800 is programmed to obey him, John forbids it from killing people and orders it to save Sarah from the T-1000. The T-800 and John intercept Sarah during an escaped attempt, but Sarah flees because the T-800 resembles the Terminator that was sent to kill her in 1984. John and the T-800 persuade her to join them, and they escape the pursuing T-1000. Although distrustful of the T-800, Sarah uses its knowledge of the future to learn that a revolutionary microprocessor Cyberdyne systems engineer Miles Bennett Dyson is developing will be essential for Skynet's creation.
Cool.
I don't know if you
That
wanna
was like 3
reread that
paragraphs,
last
but
sentence.
I don't think it actually got super far.
No,
into
it didn't. There's only 2
Yeah.
paragraphs left, and those are going to be like all condensed, I guess.
It's gonna really cram the plot there.
It's because his voice is so entrancing.
Yeah.
All right. So this, I almost wish I had seen Terminator 1 before Terminator 2, because like you, David, I didn't see Terminator 1 until maybe not much later than Terminator 2, but definitely after Terminator 2 at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to see the advancement in technology and budget and scope of this movie, having had already seen the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like upon the first scene, basically.
Yeah.
And I have to mention this whole, swing set in the fire.
Yeah,
and
so
just
we have
all
the
debris.
Yeah, we
during
have the
the
vision
credits.
of the. Is the first shot isn't the Terminator in flame? Is it?
Not the first one.
No, not the first one.
Okay, so we have the shot of the traffic. I know that's the very first shot,
Yeah.
and then it's just slowly showing kind of, I don't know, just a
the
war.
decimation,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. It cut. Yeah, you get the traffic, and then it's a cut to like the traffic where there's just dead bodies all
Yeah.
throughout.
I don't know
just
how they got my room in this, but
No, I love the sets, and then when it does finally show a Terminator, like you can tell it's not the Harryhausen like stop motion
no,
anymore.
not
it
the
looks,
herky jerky.
It looks like animatronic.
So
type
I
stuff.
was gonna. I have a factoid about that.
Well,
Yeah, so we before you do that, we do see this massive war scene, which we did have on a smaller scale in the first movie. They did the best they could, but it still looked pretty, I don't know, low budget. In this one, it is full scale. It looks great.
they did a great job.
You see multiple Terminators walking throughout just this irradiated wasteland with like corpses strewn about, skulls everywhere, and then we pan up to this one Terminator that turns towards the screen, crushes a skull, and you look right in its eyes as it kind of like pivots. But yeah, you were gonna say that it looks like an animatronic.
So
though?
Irina was saying it looked like an animatronic, and there are animatronics. So they have like multiple Terminators in it. And before, if they tried to do that in the old movie, they would have gone full. They probably wouldn't have done 4 Terminators because they relies on stop motion, but they still did 2 Terminators in stop motion and 2 animatronic. Fun fact.
Interesting.
They did in different levels, so they did some smaller versions of it in the background.
Yeah.
and so that's probably why it doesn't look as herky jerky. So
yeah, it looks awesome. Noah, you were gonna say something?
I was just gonna say that it's pretty foolhardy of the humans to resort to nuclear warfare against robots.
I think they launched it first. They launched the bombs first. Skynet does.
The nukes?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what happens. Like they override that command and
interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
they kick off the nuclear.
Good to know.
war.
Where is that in this movie? Do you see
No,
that?
we see that in Terminator 3 though.
Oh, okay. It's Terminator 3.
But I mean, I think it's what happened or what was inevitable
Right.
because we have that dream sequence with Sarah Connor later on where she's watching like a younger version of herself with a potential kid, I think, and then the bomb goes off and she's like holding onto the fence and the flesh
Ew,
is stripped
gosh,
from her
that
body.
one's insane.
But yeah, I do think it's implied that Skynet does that.
I thought that it might have just been, some nuclear thing, like deciding, like, okay, we need to get rid of Skynet and all of this.
Yeah, no.
And then they send that in.
No, I don't think so. Unless
They said it in the first one that basically Skynet tricked them into, or they started launching them thinking that everybody was launching missiles at each other.
Okay.
yeah, maybe it's I'll need to do some further research on that. I know this comes up in Terminator 3 though, and a lot more of that is fleshed out as to what eventually happens with the launching of these nuclear weapons. But yeah, great opening here. I think this is like when James Cameron becomes like peak confidence. James Cameron, like this is who I am.
it's like I'm not too bad at this.
Yeah, like I think Aliens, when he made that movie, really was a kind of breakout moment where it's like, oh, I can do this, and then
it definitely seemed like on set he felt the need to prove himself on Aliens, but at this point he's in a comfortable setting where oh, I can do this. This is fine.
Yeah, which is funny because I think he did The Abyss before this movie, and that movie didn't do quite as well, but it did advance CGI. It's that movie. It has that. It had those water effects for the first time where you could see like the face on the water
that's
thing.
right. Yeah.
So really the reason he came back to Terminator was because The Abyss wasn't just this runaway success. So it's like, okay, let me get another solid hit. And it's kind of funny. James Cameron must be someone who's like really hard to say no to in a room because he managed to greenlight this. This movie had the biggest budget ever at its time. Like it's the biggest budget a movie has ever had, not counting inflation. I think there's certain movies way back when that had like massive budgets that would inflate to above this. But I think the movie was approved at like a $60 million budget, but everyone knew like, oh, it's James Cameron. It's going to go higher. We know it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it did. But I would say that this exists because Terminator was a hit, but not a massive hit. And James Cameron just is very good he's very good in a room to convince people like, hey, let's make this thing happen. So let's talk Terminator 2. Sorry, I'm talking.
No, you're fine.
I'm
you're
going
fine.
way off.
You're good, man.
Let's talk about the intro of Arnold Schwarzenegger in this new role. At this point in his career, he's had so many big hits. He's become a massive star, like top of the movie poster, like it says Schwarzenegger, and you're gonna go see it, like no matter what. Whereas in the original movie, he was in like Conan before the first Terminator, but he was definitely not a butts and seats guy where you would, Schwarzenegger's in this, I gotta go see this.
Oh, pumping some iron, yeah.
Yeah, but this movie was certainly like, his star has definitely risen, and I think that actually also helped get this movie the budget that it needed. It's like this perfect confluence of James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger really being huge. And so what do y'all think about Arnold Schwarzenegger in this film? Do you like him being the quote unquote good Terminator? And how do you think this role kind of maybe compares to his others? Is it his best role?
Best role ever?
I think so.
Nah.
Honestly,
For me,
name a better one.
For me, it's his best role.
I cannot think of a better one.
What about you, David?
I mean, I feel like if I looked through his filmography, I would definitely find one.
Have you, though?
I probably have. I'm just thinking like...
And yet this is the only one you really know.
The funny thing is, I can't think of any of them right now. I'm going to look. You know what? Screw you guys.
There's Predator.
Yeah,
he's good in Predator.
So he's good in Predator, but Predator isn't really... He doesn't draw the focus of that movie.
Yeah.
The focus is
the Predator.
Basically the Predator.
Yeah.
So
What-
he's a great antagonist to the Predator, but...
What about that one with Danny DeVito?
Twins. We already talked about this. Yeah. A Kindergarten Cop, easily his best one.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Junior.
No, look, that was kind of... David, I actually didn't think I'd get any pushback on this one. I thought it was,
Jingle all the way.
yeah, I thought it was pretty obvious. Like, I think this is the most perfectly catered to what Arnold Schwarzenegger is capable of.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Look like a badass and have a couple catchphrases.
well, it's like it's a role where your body does half the acting and you do the other half.
But then
Like,
there's
it's
a little
like-
heart to it, too.
Yeah, exactly. It takes calculation too. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
say like he's not 100% invested in it. I'm just saying like with a body like and a reputation that Arnold Schwarzenegger has, playing a stiff kind of Terminator robot thing, and then having this slight 10% of it's the dial on that TARS robot in
Right.
Interstellar where turn up the humor or the heart
Yeah.
to 10 to 20%. And then that's what you have here. It's like, be your character from the last one, but you have good motivations, and occasionally you kind of break character and are funny in a way, or at least endearing in a way. And there's no scene in this where he is not pitch perfect. Like, he completely disappears into this role, which is really saying something because it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know? Like, this is the one movie where I see Arnold Schwarzenegger when I look at him, but I'm thinking, that's a Terminator. You know, whereas any other Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, you're like, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, when does he embody another character so much that you're like, oh, that's definitely that character?
Yeah.
No.
Jingle all the way.
His
Total
role,
Recall, maybe. I thought he actually... I'm kind of partial to Total Recall. But
I really love Total Recall, and maybe you're right, but I just think this one...
yeah, not to the extent that this one is.
I
Yeah.
don't know if I
Yeah.
recall.
Yeah. Also, interesting question. Who do you think the lead of this movie is? Do you think it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, or do you think it's someone else? Or do you think it's just a ensemble?
So for me, it is ensemble, but the two most prominent in my mind are Sarah Connor and the Terminator himself. Because even though it's not necessarily character development, it's almost character development through the impact of John Connor, you know, on that robot. So it's like an external force creating character development.
It's like a buddy
in him.
movie almost.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
pseudo character development. So it's he definitely feels like the draw or the kind of the mascot, basically, of the Terminator franchise.
So
but
he's
in
kind of
this
the Michael
one-
Myers of Halloween,
Yeah.
like that.
So for this, it feels like he is the marketing factor in my mind, but the story is mostly Sarah's
Yeah.
for me. He fulfills this role that's weirdly very wholesome. And you wouldn't expect that exactly from this sort of setting.
Yeah.
So
here's how I'll break it down. At the Oscars, you get there's Oscars for lead performance and there's Oscar for supporting.
mm-hmm.
And if you nail me down and force me to answer, I think his character is supporting. It's because
he's like the supporting character that draws attention.
Yeah.
I think you're right, and I actually think John Connor's technically the main character of this one.
And I actually maybe agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, because that's an interesting discussion about this movie. Because I going in, I was like, Sarah Connor's the main of this character, and then halfway through, I was like, maybe Arnold is, or maybe the Terminator is the main character. And then, even though Edward Furlong is, I don't know,
He's not in this as much as I remembered him being in
well,
it.
he's in it a lot. I think technically, if you really have to break it down, he is the most central character to the story because he is the glue that's holding the other two together, the Sarah Connor and the Terminator. Without him, this group doesn't work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
John, are you talking about John?
And another line of thought, whose lens are you looking at the events happening through?
Yeah,
Right.
he is also kind of, the surrogate in a way.
So I will push back on that then too, because I think in this movie we jump between lenses.
Yeah,
For
we do a
me,
little bit.
it's the wholesome aspect comes from John Connor's perspective, where the Terminator is basically a walking gun in many respects, but because he's still a kid, although he is a troubled kid, he's still a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so he puts a spin on it that turns into this almost like 80s little coming of age teenager film.
Yeah.
But then we jump to Sarah Connor, where that's when we get some of the more troubling scenes where she has these awful visions of the future. There's a lot of death, you know, so there is a jump tonally between the two.
So are you saying this is the good, the bad, and the ugly of sci-fi movies?
I mean, I guess in some kind of way it is.
It does swap around a little bit.
But depending on which character you're with, it definitely changes. And for her, the world she's living in is far more bleak than the one John is living in. So.
And I guess we should catch up with the other two characters here. So we're introduced to Edward Furlong's John Connor and also Linda Hamilton's Sarah Connor. And I'll throw the other guy in there, Robert Patrick, as the T-1000. We have his introduction as well. Mm-hmm. So kind of a lot to take in here. Actually, let's start with Robert Patrick, since I do think he's brought into the scene before.
Wasn't this kind of his breakout role? Like, he wasn't in much
I think
beforehand.
I think this and X-Files are still his biggest things, easily.
So originally they were going to have Billy Idol play this character, if you didn't know that.
Well, actually, even before that, the original plan was to have Michael Biehn from the first one playing
I don't know
the
why
evil
I was
one.
thinking of Mr. Bean.
Yeah,
that would be. I would love to see an incompetent Terminator just
bumbling his way around. The thing with Billy Idol though was that he was going to do it up until the last minute too.
That's
I guess
so
he got
weird.
in a motorcycle accident and couldn't do it.
Which funny, there's
that's ironic.
some motorcycle trauma in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, and so what's his name? Furlong? Is that him?
Edward Furlong?
Yeah.
So Edward Furlong, I guess they're like, he tried out for the role. They described him as a mixture of David Bowie and I thought it was a perfect comparison. Anyway, David Bowie was one of them, but he's just like
Edward Furlong?
Yeah, well, it's like that combined with something else, and I just
I don't
cannot
see that.
think of it. But they thought that he had a similar sort of hair and face shape to Billy Idol enough where he could pull it off.
Interesting. But Robert Patrick, talk about like And I think it was actually described by James Cameron, whereas like Robert Patrick, he's like the Cadillac of Terminators, whereas
the sleek new model.
Yeah, whereas the T-800, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger's model, was like the tank, just the immovable object, I guess, just plow through things, and the other one's
Freddy
just,
versus Jason.
Yeah, which makes sense because Robert Patrick, he's a leaner and meaner, literally.
Right.
And you see that the way he runs, the way he controls his breath, the way he like analyzes things, it's very
deliberate.
Like it's so calculated.
It feels like a bear versus a panther.
Yeah.
You know, like there's differences in their strengths where one feels like it's stalking, whereas the other one is just kind of like barreling through.
Yeah, and what an interesting move too. Like we're gonna have our more intimidating, better Terminator be much smaller than Arnold, much less imposing, but has this like, I don't know, just seems more laser focused and just dialed in. And
he's icy.
Yeah,
like,
icy. Yes.
There's something about
literally
him.
towards the end.
I would say he's known
spooky.
for his stare in this, like glaring you down.
No, I think one of the first things I thought of rewatching this was, especially once he commandeers the cop outfit and everything, was it reminds me of so many serial killer stories. He's definitely kind of serial killer.
Yeah, this guy definitely has a murder kit.
Yeah, like I think what makes it so chilling is that you're supposed to regard the cops as, there to protect you, and putting something sinister behind that guise is just it's kind of like what some serial killers did. Like there were people that would dress up as cops and pull like a woman over. And it's spooky.
Yeah, it's funny how both of these Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 evoke different types of real life horrors.
Yeah.
Like whereas the first Terminator almost seems like the school shooter or mall shooter type, where it just bursts in.
Where they're not trying to be sneaky.
Yeah,
they're
killing
just
a bunch of people.
catching you off guard.
Yeah, and whereas this one's like, I'm going to go to your house, kill you, then kill your husband, kill your and then I'm going to disguise myself, slink off somewhere else.
Lure you
like,
into a spot where you would be vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah, very different types of horrors in both of these.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a really good point. I had never actually thought of the kind of serial killer aspect.
I think a perfect scene in this intro is where he takes over John's mom's or his foster mom's body. And just that whole scene, the way it plays out, where he calls, on the payphone and is talking to the T-1000, which is his stepmom, it's eerie.
Yeah.
And then you see like her stick her hand out, and you're like, well, what just happened there? And you look over and great CGI again.
Yep.
Knifed straight through the mouth of the...
shot.
Oh, man.
What was it that he said? Your mother is dead.
No, yeah. He's like, how do I know? How do I know if he's not already there? Let me listen. What's your dog's name? Wolfie. How's Wolfie doing? Wolfie's fine. Your parents are dead.
Your parents are dead.
Finding humor in the funniest of places, or the weirdest of places.
Is that funny back in the day, do you think? Or is it just art?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That
funny.
landed.
Yeah.
Based off the box office, that the humor definitely landed.
Well, I know it
like-
could be serious, though.
And again, that's bringing up this just how different they are in approach, and how the T-1000 is just very like, oh, I'm going to lure you into this trap. Everything's fine. Come here. And being a little trickster. Whereas with the Terminator, we know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's very blunt and very direct. He's like, oh, yeah, hang up. Like we're not even going to play the game.
Yeah.
We're just like hanging up. It's like, let's go. They're dead. Like moving on kind of a thing. I love it. And there are so many examples of it where he'll just completely obliterate a group of people, without a thought. Like, nope, we just have one objective.
What's great, too, is I don't think I've ever thought about this, but a robot, which they both are, or, I guess they're both just
AI.
Yeah, AI. You think, oh, they have this same command. but one of them is going about it in this way, like it's following the command in a robotic way, and the other one is also following the command in a robotic way that makes sense. Both are devoid of emotion, yet they're different. Like you think, like it's weird to think about it that way. But
and I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes it so great. And the reason other movies that kind of handle that same approach, where it's like, oh, the robot that's the protector, or the robot that's the force of evil.
Yeah.
They always have to one up it in brawn, but not tactics.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of action films fail, is that, oh, we have to make it bigger and stronger. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean literally bigger and stronger. It's like they changed their approach, where they're like, oh, let's make something that's more cunning, that can problem solve. And he definitely has problem solving moments where he starts learning the abilities he has and how he can use them in different ways.
Yeah.
So I like that aspect added to the T-1000's character, where with each scene that they encounter someone and murder someone, basically, he's almost looking at it like, huh, that's new, like, oh, okay, maybe
like
I can
downloading
use this.
information.
Yeah,
like,
I
okay,
can
I'll
use this
that in the
later.
future.
Yeah.
AJ, any thoughts on the T-1000 Robert Patrick here before we move on to the next actor?
No, and I mean, just the kind of physical embodiment of, the fluidity and the adaptability manifests in, physical and metaphorical ways. But, even the contrast between the two and the twist, whether or not you've even seen the first one, where you're expecting, the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the older model, to be the first one hunting him down, and then, no, he's actually going to protect him, and he tells John to get down, and he shoots the one that's dressed as a cop, the traditional protector, I guess. So there's some subversion of expectations there that still, even though when the twist is spoiled, or you've already seen this, 100 times, it's still a satisfying
Imagine not having
to
known, though.
Yeah.
It is satisfying still because you can look through the eyes of John Connor in that moment.
Yeah.
You can still look through the eyes of someone who doesn't know what's happening. Like, oh, this clearly is the bad guy. This clearly is the good guy. Wait, the bad guy's shooting the good guy. Oh, wait, the good guy's bad. The bad guy's good. Like, it's a funny, definite subversion there. And they use it again later on in the mental institution with Sarah Connor.
Like, a good way to put it into perspective is, imagine Halloween has suddenly a different villain.
And Michael Myers is
and
the
Michael
good guy.
Myers suddenly turns against that other villain. And you know how hyped
Freddy
that's
versus Jason?
That's what I was thinking.
Okay, but you kind of know based on the title what's going to happen.
You know a movie that does that, Noah?
What?
Alien versus Predator.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Yeah, the Predator, normally bad, teams up with the human to take down the aliens.
But I will say, though, still in that title, it's telling you what's going to happen. Whereas,
not really. It doesn't say alien teams up with human to kill
Alien versus Predator.
You know what?
Well, it just means they're fighting each other.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
but
it's, and to James Cameron's credit, the original story, or at least speculative script or whatever, had called for the T-1000 to be in the first Terminator 2, and he recognized that was too much for that movie, both storytelling wise and from a technology of the day and production wise. And so I'm glad, that he didn't try to force it in.
Right.
He waited to do it right.
Wouldn't I can imagine him being James Cameron, he would have figured something out, but I could not, it's clearly something that wasn't ready. But I wanted to touch back on something you said about the T-1000 and Robert Patrick, about his performance. I wanted to talk about the physicality of these two. We already did, but Robert Patrick, the way he performs as this character, he looks like liquid. Like he could become
does a good job.
Like he could become liquid.
I think you're just That's silly. He's a person.
No, but he doesn't literally look
He
like
doesn't
he
look
looks
like
like he-
liquid.
No, the way he moves though, like I believe it.
Which is
you know?
weird because it's the opposite because because
got
he's so
elastic
rigid.
bones.
Like he's very
Yeah.
precise and rigid. It's like the opposite of fluid. But because he can mold into it, I don't know. It's,
Oh, he's not Domo Arigato, Mr. Roboto kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
you can be fluid and robotic at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
No, his moves are very, very precise, whereas the other way is almost, or
Like
Arnold
brute.
Schwarzenegger's version is more, A to B.
very brute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do want to talk about Linda Hamilton now. She one of our, if we've got 3 co-leads in this movie, she's definitely one of the bigger ones, maybe the biggest. She is in an absolute horror story here. Just stuck in this mental institution. She's been like trying her best to keep her cool for this doctor. He was in the original one, if you remember correctly.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that he would, I don't know, want to keep her here locked up because she's spouting stuff that to the everyman or woman sounds pretty much crazy.
Even though wasn't he there in the precinct when they got attacked by the?
Yes, he's in that. He's in the first Terminator.
He just forgot all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was at a point where
He's just a dick. That's all.
Yeah, he is. He just wants to control people.
But yeah, I totally feel her frustration in this moment where she's been keeping it cool for so long, and this doctor's still like, despite everything she said, I'm gonna recommend another 6 months of what you're doing, like and you can imagine, like, we've been doing this whole song and dance over and over again. You're just the next 6 months, you're just gonna do the same thing. And Linda Hamilton, I can't believe this is the same actress because she does from the first one. She's just the innocent kind of, becomes a badass by the end, but you don't see any of this type of character in her. She is someone who looks like she is a powder keg that is that could just go off at any moment and does go off like multiple times.
And is incredibly resourceful too.
Yeah. But it takes a great actress to to not show yourself, unleashing that inner frustration, but like when she's just trying to keep her cool in that room, you can tell, like, it just, you can feel the pressure and the taking all her energy.
Yeah.
Like,
What's that called? Eye acting?
It's not just eye.
I know it. I know it's not just that, but she does eye acting extremely well.
Yeah.
Where you can tell exactly what she's thinking by the way she's looking with her eyes.
Yeah, but I think in this case, it's not just the eyes; it's her full body.
It's the body language.
Like she looks like you can being almost perfectly still, but you can tell she wants to choke this guy.
Yep.
Like,
I also love with her character the way that they resolve their, I guess not their differences, but how quickly she is able to change gears to realize he's on her side.
That actor, by the way, is Earl Bowen, the psychiatrist.
Oh, okay.
Just so you know.
So annoying.
Yeah,
or doctor.
he is.
Yeah, doctor. Sorry.
But I love that because you get so frustrated in movies when you see a certain character, like there's so many signs for them to latch onto to trust another character or do a certain thing, and they don't do it. But then her character is able to quickly catch on even after her brief horror, and realize, okay, he's on my side, I'm gonna shoot with him and work with him.
It's kind of like, well, in this situation they're not posing a threat, so I'm to survive this moment, we'll disregard that and table it for later, basically.
The enemy of
and
my
she
enemy
would
is
be
my
ready
friend.
to, and you can tell she'd be ready to fight back against him if it was
she
needed.
had to, yeah.
Yeah.
Now that whole sequence though of her being in, I guess the psych ward or whatever you would call it, is incredibly frustrating.
Yeah,
because I want to reach into the TV and strangle that guy.
Yeah.
And he very clearly gives off this aspect of kind of being a sadist in his work environment.
Yeah, he's like he goes to sleep at night happy because he's
Yeah, it's
just-
like he
look at me, I
loves.
he has
rejected her.
people in the palms of his hands.
Yeah, he
and he's-
loves having people in this ground where he's in control of them in some way mentally.
Yeah,
So, and especially that scene when she's like, I'm good now, you know, like, can I get a phone call at least? Can I see my son? She's like, no, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, he gets
like,
he gets an
Ugh.
erection when he denies people
it
rights to
really
give
does
phone
seem
calls.
that way.
You don't?
It really does.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's so satisfying when he finally is put like right in the middle of the shit.
I
you
love
would
that.
say.
Yeah, I love
That's
that
so
she takes
satisfying.
him hostage.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Well, another note about Sarah Connor is just, I mean, what's her name? Who plays her?
Linda Hamilton.
Linda Hamilton. I mean, the complete 180 of a character from movie 1 to movie 2.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
and yet you believe it.
oh, I
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
believe it.
Yeah, I believe this more than even though I think Jamie Lee Curtis is great, I believe it a little more than her becoming this
Yeah.
hardened badass in that latest Halloween movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's for whatever reason, Linda Hamilton has this nature about her that
Yeah.
just sells it.
She also
Well-
looks like she worked out for like 5 years in
Well,
prime.
also-
No, she looks crazy.
Like you think about the time gap and it's perfectly plausible because
Yeah.
it's been like what 10, 12 years,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yep, and just being locked up here for
Yep.
so long, you just understand it. And with guards just being absolute creeps while she's strapped into
Yeah.
her bed or whatever. Yeah, I can imagine it.
Yeah.
Rounding out our cast, we got one more here. Edward Furlong. We haven't really talked about him as much as John Connor. He has his, critics because he's annoying at times. But I think this Edward Furlong, this young actor, did a exceptional job at the time.
I agree. I don't think he's that annoying.
Mhm.
There
He's
are
a bit
scenes
annoying at the beginning.
There are
and-
scenes in which he's kind of obnoxious, but it's also not entirely unjustified.
Well, I also think it's just his kind of prepubescent.
Yeah,
voice.
Just in a
people-
maladjusted
yeah.
kid with, the stuff he's been through and the way he's been
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
raised, or, I think some
Yeah.
of the voice, I don't know, might be contributing factors to that. But honestly, like, I see him as John Connor. If I think John
Yeah,
Connor,
yeah.
this is the first person that comes to mind.
Yes,
Yeah.
and exactly, you nailed it on the head. That's like when you go into this movie, when you say you don't like a character or an actor, you have to separate yourself from not liking that character.
It's like
Yeah,
Joffrey
yeah.
from Game of Thrones. I
Yeah.
hated the freaking character,
But he
loved
did
the actor.
Dang
Yeah.
good job.
But and when I think of John Connor, I almost never see it as an actor. I see that that's this young twerpy John Connor kid.
Yeah.
I don't like him at first, but in terms of
Yeah.
like selling this role, I think he does
The acting
A good
isn't
job.
bad.
He's annoying in the same way that any kid that's troubled, you kind of find annoying because they're
Yeah.
treating you like they're a jerk, basically.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when you think about his character, his mom is basically bred him into thinking, oh yeah, you're basically the savior of the future
Yeah.
and they're going to be robots that are trying to kill you and blah, blah, blah. To his knowledge, that's not true.
And she's delusional.
And she's delusional. She's, at the hospital. And now he has to live with foster parents. So if that
Who
was
hate
your
him.
role model growing up, how can you trust anyone that
Yeah.
talks to you? Like I could imagine it's like he probably thinks it's me against the world basically
Yeah.
at this point. So it makes sense that
Mhm.
he's not quite likable in the beginning.
and
And it does. Sorry, go ahead.
Let's say you can't get mad at him for having some voice cracks. I mean,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
that's part
Plus-
about being a preteen.
Having that haircut has to addle your brain to some extent.
oh yeah.
I like the
Every-
haircut.
It's
every
not quite the
single
mullet,
kid-
I'll say, but it's
Every single kid with that haircut, they got a chip on their shoulder.
kind of Leo DiCaprio sported
Should
that
just
style
eat
for
it.
a while,
He did.
didn't he? Yeah.
He did.
Yeah, that was a thing in the 90s for some reason.
Yep.
It always makes me think of, even though I didn't watch the show, Dawson's Creek for some reason. That's just like,
I didn't
I don't know
watch it.
why that haircut
Mm-hmm.
is associated with that TV show in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I don't know.
It's weird. It's a weird connection.
Yeah. All right, fast forwarding in the plot. So we've established Terminator 1, T-800, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's on a mission. We have that great bar scene that we didn't talk about already, but it was just so funny to see that redone in a different way in this movie. They kind of had one in the first movie, but this one you get the shades, he gets the bike, all that cool stuff, grabs the shotgun out of that guy's hand. It's pretty awesome.
Ooh,
get the bad to the bone.
Yeah.
Needle drop. Also got the Robert Patrick T8 T1000 introduced. He's killing people. One by one kills John Connor's parents and is still I will say he gets sidelined for a lot of the movie.
He does.
He
at
does.
one point. But we can come back to that. And obviously we got John Connor butting up with his friends. They hack the ATM, they don't hack the ATM. He just knows the code and they get some money.
I would call that hacking.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know what I like. Sorry, this is just a little off the side. I like that you have a prejudgment of his friend as being like, oh gosh, he's got a mullet. This kid's no good, and then he actually is like covering for John Connor.
Yeah, he's a good friend,
backing up for him, and he's a good kid, and he's like trying to protect him.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, not bad. And then you never see from him again.
Mullet boy. Yeah, that's true.
Props to the mullet boy. They're not all bad.
Hey, you should start a band. Props to the mullet boy.
What the heck?
But yeah, we have the T1000 tracks down John Connor. It's a scary scene. Then we have the confrontation between him and the T800, and it's that hallway fight. Poor guy who's caught in the middle and gets shot to death. I always feel sorry for that man. Then, so the T800 takes John Connor after blowing a hole or a few holes through the T1000, and then we have our first big action sequence: the motorcycle versus 18-wheel, not 18-wheeler, but the cab, the
18-wheeler cab.
Yeah, the 18-wheeler cab. Mostly all done practically, by the way. There is a Arnold Schwarzenegger stunt double at a few points, but a lot of this is actually Arnold Schwarzenegger on a motorcycle with a shotgun doing all these maneuvers, trying to look cool. Apparently, it was really hard to do.
Love the twisty shotgun.
Yeah. I love John Connor being on this little just dirt bike and Arnold Schwarzenegger, or the stunt person, picking him up off the bike and putting him on his bike mid just driving. Like, it's just so great. By the way, is there a better scene or a more or like a cooler or scarier scene than John Connor thinking he's gotten away? He's in the aqueduct or wherever they are. I don't know what that type of location is called. But just like hearing the sound above him, looking up, and then suddenly seeing the truck cab just barreling down on him from the. It's so cool. And,
I can imagine that being particularly tickling to you. Just I don't know why you like people being dangled in front of.
I do, I do.
Sometimes
I can just see Reese as a kid, like playing with toys, and he's like, "Oh no, this is fun." And just like another hand, a truck is ramming. It's like, "Wah!"
Yeah, except in my version, it would roll over the kid.
Yeah, you would kill the child.
But yeah, it's just, dude, you should have just kept going. Don't stop. Keep going.
No.
But pretty great sequence. I love the just the volleys that the T800 and T1000 are having, shooting back and forth towards one another. The movement of when the T1000 goes under the bridge and it knocks off the top of the truck.
Yeah.
And he just kind of like casually pushes the front of the windshield down so he can see better, I guess. It's just so good. Like
I have some funny anecdotes about that, because the original shot of the movie, when the truck comes over the, crashing down or whatever, the windows popped out. And so, continuity, that's not a big deal to me, but apparently it was to James Cameron, because for some reason it bothered him a lot. And so when they remastered in 4K, he had them completely CGI the windows to stay in place.
Really?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Which is just funny, because there's a lot of other things he missed that he could have fixed. But another one in this exact same scene, you brought up stunt doubles or whatever for Arnold on the motorcycle. There was one pretty awkward one where it's just like, and I didn't notice it because you're not paying attention in action. But when you really look back at it, there's one scene where it does not look like him at all.
The face,
and so they remastered that as well, and I guess put his face in.
Which, can I say, that's the type of changes I don't mind to an older movie.
Agreed.
Like if you're doing something like just aesthetically making it look a little better, making it look a little more accurate, I'm all for going back and changing that. What Lucas did to the Star Wars movies, though, is it's a travesty.
Well, I don't know that this is the title to champion the 4K remaster for, because
oh no, the 4K is not good.
Yeah, they turned the digital noise reduction up to 11 on this, and it's just terrible.
It's actually one of the most notoriously bad 4Ks, weirdly.
Yeah.
That one in, like, I think the first Ghostbusters are supposed to be weirdly terrible for some reason. I'm more talking about just making effects look better or making practical effects look better.
Fixing
going
mistakes.
back and trying to perfect your work, basically.
Yes.
Like taking out cameras that shouldn't be in view and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like reflections in sunglasses that shows the whole crew or something. Like
there's a scene that actually happens in this too. Well, one more little anecdote that I think is funny that they didn't take out in the 4K version. There's a scene where he's being shot at later. We're not going to go into it, but if you look in the background, a random crew member kind of walks into frame, stares at everything, and then walks off again. And they never took it out. And I had to go back and check. And I was like, holy crap.
That's about like in Lord of the Rings when one of the orcs sits up.
Yep,
clearly in view, and then lays back down because he's supposed to be dead.
Or fine, or the Game of Thrones Starbucks cup kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
they edited that out.
Oh well, yeah.
I'm sure they did.
Yep. Yeah, it happens in all movies. We get it.
It does. There's a lot to control.
I just find
on
it comical.
Set.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But they get out of the chase. We have the massive explosion, and are first introduced to the liquid Terminator in all of its glory, walking out. I'll say it. Yeah, it looks dated, but
not that dated.
Yeah, but in the context of the movie, it still looks great.
It holds up. I think it holds up.
It reflects what makes it still work is it reflects the colors of the flames and everything perfectly. Even though you can identify it with CGI, it still seems like a entity that is existing within this world. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't break the illusion of the movie. Okay, so at this point, this is when John Connor convinces the Terminator, or John Connor figures out that the Terminator has to listen to him after this moment. And his next order, after he unfairly, or at least kind of rudely, has him beat up these two guys who are just trying to lend him a hand, tells him that they have to rescue his mom. Because,
please, Terminator, save my mom.
That was the one annoying part where these guys were coming to help, and then
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
That was the only part.
They were just looking to moi. They're just looking for some toot.
Yeah.
They are the kind of that is their vibe for sure. But once he figures out that these Terminator things are real, it now falls on. He now realizes his mom's not a whack job, and is like, okay, we gotta go rescue her because she was right all along. And now things are actually serious because if everything she said was true, that's pretty alarming. Terminator thinks it's too risky, but he overrides him. And this is also when he's like, oh, you can't kill, which leads to another more kind of deadpan humor that in this movie where it's just like, oh, he just shoots so many people's knees.
They will live. Or what doesn't he say? He'll live.
Yeah, no. Yeah. The next scene is they drive up to the mental facility, and the guard, he just shoots him in the knee, and John Connor's alarmed at first, and then the Terminator turns to him and says, he'll live, and drives on into the... No, but then we have the whole, a kind of... Both Terminators are heading towards this location because they know that it's like a point of interest where the T-800 or the T-1000 is like, hey, John Connor's probably going to go towards his mom. So that's where I'm going to go and try to head them off. And at the same time, Sarah Connor is staging this massive like prison break. It's really impressive, actually, the way she uses this little pick to get out of her restraints. Yeah, paperclip. And then she gets the she takes out that one guard, and then she has what are those? It's like it's
a syringe that she fills.
No,
with
it's a
cleaning.
baton, like one of those.
Police baton.
Yeah, the way she runs with that thing is like, oh, you do this every day. Like it just seemed like I don't know.
She ready to fight.
By the way, I already forgot her name. I'm terrible at this with names, but
Linda Hamilton.
Linda freaking Hamilton. She actually practiced lock picking for this movie. So when she lock picks on here, she's doing it.
Yeah,
she's actually unlocking a door.
Gosh, she must have had so much fun in this role. I would do it.
Or not fun. I don't know. You would do it though, Armina?
Oh yeah.
She actually injected Drano in that guy's neck.
Yeah,
that's what she was threatening. That blue liquid Drano, which you don't want that in your neck.
They gave her a stage prop, but she brought her own.
she was ready to actually kill somebody.
The tension of that scene though was so good. Just her kind of like you're constantly in fear of someone coming up behind her or doing something, and they do eventually. But she's got the syringe to the doctor's neck, and I don't know. It's just fun to watch her. Like what I love about what James Cameron did here is, if not for the Terminators, you believe, she could probably make it out of here.
Yeah,
she would have. Exactly. She would have made it out.
Well,
I have
she does
no doubt.
get hit by a guy.
No. Well, what happens is she was about to go in the elevator to leave, and that's when the Terminator scared her the opposite direction, and that's when she got hit.
Yeah.
No, there's one point where she's backing up with the guy, and there's another guy waiting. behind.
But she gets him.
That's true. Yeah, it's just cool.
I think she was gonna make it.
Yeah, she could have made it. Yeah, but then she comes face to face with the Terminator, and I love the complete pivot she does.
Oh man, it's so good.
It's just this fear of like, this just drops everything.
Perfect slow-mo, by the way. Like, I don't always like slow-mo, but the way like she stumbles backwards in slow-mo and just the fear in her eyes.
What's so great is you can tell the trauma that this the Terminator put in her from the first movie, where it's all evidenced by her reaction to seeing this thing, that you believe that this has kind of been in her nightmares, like every night thinking about it. Like, and just to come face to face with it again, it is literally reliving a nightmare.
Right.
Symbolically, she's escaping this mental facility, this prison, only to, literally realize her nightmare.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, maybe the prison's not so bad. Let me go back in. No, I don't know.
Yeah. And one thing I also like is that while she is in control of her mental faculties, there is an amount of her that is a bit unhinged.
Oh, she is definitely,
for sure.
Definitely unhinged.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
It's hard. We're in her perspective, so we're always going to root for her. But at the same time, like, imagine
if we weren't.
Imagine if we were at another perspective, what would we think of her character?
Well, I think they do a really good job of showcasing that later whenever she tries to kill the computer switch guy, because then you just see, like, she has no feelings of empathy really anymore.
But then she eventually holds
okay,
back.
I know she does.
She can't do it.
For the mission, like, you could tell she is ready to do anything. But it looks like somebody who came back from war with PTSD. Like, she is definitely unhinged.
Did you refer to the creator of Skynet as the computer switch guy?
He did.
I may have. He created the chip, right?
That scene is involved. I thought that was actually, for me, that was a really touching scene, though, when the kid starts trying to protect his dad.
It's a great scene, but we're not there yet. We should wait.
The Terminator is immediately followed by her son, John Connor, and conflicted feelings here. You can tell she's like trying to process a million things. But once the other Terminator is introduced, the mission is clear. Go with her son, get out of there, and they are able to escape the T-1000. I do like that scene where the T-1000 goes through the iconic
the
bars, and then the gun is like,
stuck.
Okay, move around a little bit. That scene does so much to convince us that this guy is made of liquid metal.
Oh, yeah.
So where it's like, oh yeah, I can't pull this practical thing that I got from this world
because it's
through
not
with
part
me.
of me. Yeah,
it's just all these little subtle, small touches that James Cameron does to make you believe this thing as it is.
Yeah.
So good.
Well, and there's times where it really does hold up CG-wise. Like, very next scene after that, he chases them to the elevator.
Yeah.
And the door closes, and he shoves his arm in.
Makes that pry
liquid pry
thing.
metal thing. And I've watched it so many times now. It looks real. Like,
It does
I don't
look
know
really
what
good.
real it is, but
Yeah,
it
and
looks real.
And even when he jumps on top and is like stabbing downward towards them, and I will always be more convinced by CGI effects when they do the work to make it seem like it's interacting with the world.
Yep.
Like show me that CGI blade go through the top of the elevator room and have it impact one of the characters, cuts the character. Like, that is so much better than just creating something that looks vaguely photorealistic and then just having it exist in like a plane that doesn't interact with reality. It just doesn't, like, almost all the Marvel movies end in this CGI hodgepodge that there's just, you can tell it's 95% CGI and 5% like actual people on a stage, that it just becomes disconnected from something that's believable. Like, those movies are still good, but you miss some of that practical here. And this one has that. I honestly think the 90s were the best and worst of this, where when you see the best, it's literally, it has not been topped, where it's just the perfect implementation of CGI, because the worst of like Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. But
well, it's because this was the turning point in technology, so people were so used to doing practical effects that you still see it a lot in the 90s, but also they just were getting to the point where they could do CGI, this being the first big one, really. And then you're going to have a lot of flops of people trying to make it work and it not working, and so that's why you get such a fluctuation, I think, in the 90s.
And I think there's some filmmakers today that have properly learned the lessons that this movie established and Lord of the Rings established, like a Denis Villeneuve with like Dune and Blade Runner.
Oh yeah.
Just doing the work to have enough practical and enough CGI, just that perfect marriage.
Even in the Mandalorian and stuff like that, when I was looking up some of the CGI stuff, I'm like, oh, that's some stuff I remember seeing sort of like them bring up in the Mandalorian, the making of. So
yeah. But yeah, the T-1000 chases them outside in the parking lot, cuts off they shoot off part of his arm. John Connor it's like kind of hanging into the vehicle there. He pulls it out, throws it, and then it becomes a part of his body again. I did want to ask y'all, do you think that every aspect of this creature's or the T-1000's body is it like, oh, if that's attached to the vehicle, does he then know exactly where they are at all times?
It's like a tracking device kind of thing.
I feel like it would be a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is he a slightly smaller man now because he's not?
Yes, yeah. Or at the very least, he'll like shift some of his like thigh muscle to his foot to balance out the height.
Could the tip of his hand or whatever that was, could that individually kill John Connor? That's another interesting question.
I would say probably.
Yeah. So originally, when I had originally seen this movie, I was like, no, don't get rid of that. Like, you weakened him. But now, as I've watched it again, I'm like, no,
that was a smart move.
That was probably a good move. Yeah.
The biggest thing that would have done is just made his legs slightly shorter. He would have been a Noah.
Yeah.
I would say one option that they could have done is, separate the parts of his bodies and like make them distant from each other.
That would be interesting. Like if that was the plan of like dissecting him and then burying those parts. I feel like that's another
I don't
think
you would survive long enough to separate parts of him.
Yeah.
I think
that's a difficulty. Yeah. But the thing is, they weren't ever really aiming to do that. They're just like shoot and move on.
Yeah. The best they could do was just get as far away as possible.
Well, there was that time that they froze him and he started like melting.
All right, but before at the end of the movie?
Yeah. But before he melted, they totally could have just been like, all right, let's figure this out and, maybe separate the pieces or...
We're not all you, so...
I'm not saying I would do that.
I think we need to move on plot.
Yeah, I'll quickly wrap us up here. So they regroup at this, I guess it's like a fueling station. Sarah Connor has some old buddies there. I think they're the people she met up with at the end of the first movie. I think
that's what they're hinting at, yeah.
So they're restocking. We kind of learn... she sees the T-800 and John Connor interacting and kind of tells herself, like, oh, he's got a dad figure now. Now I can go kill the person who creates Skynet because someone is there to look after John Connor. So she kind of just... that's her inner monologue, or her inner dialogue justifying the actions that she's about to commit. We also have that horrific vision, which I think is so cool and so well done, of her. I said it earlier, but when she's just looking through this fence at her life, if she had never if all of this had never happened, but the Terminator still existed and the bombs go off and everything explodes and I think maybe the coolest shot in this movie, one of the coolest shots, is her
I love it.
Yeah, her holding on to the gate as the nuclear explosion strips away her body, and it's just like a skeleton hanging on.
I love it when Sarah Connor strips, man.
Thanks for that.
The thing I love about the inclusion of this kind of scene, not only does it look great, but also just giving you a little glimpse into what Sarah Connor has been having to live with her whole life, because she hasn't really had any other proof than the events of the first movie that this is actually going to happen.
Yeah.
But you can imagine the internal dialogue and arguments she's had with herself. Like, imagine how many times she would have wanted to just pretend she can live a normal life, you know, and have her kid and have a normal motherhood with her child, but had to talk herself out of that for the sake of, you know, the greater good. So
the greater
consistently
good. I liked your Hot Fuzz reference there.
Yeah, the greater good. Consistently turning off that part of her so that she can almost, you know, robotically, there are many parallels to her being kind of a Terminator herself, just carry out this lifelong purpose of hers and trusting that this will help her son, you know?
Yeah.
So I love that scene because it really is heartbreaking when you think of it that way. And it does resolve herself to be like, oh, I have to do this. And so later when she does find that guy, Dyson, and she has trouble shooting him, it's that same argument again. And you can tell that her anger at him isn't just for the sake of the world. It's, no, you personally messed up my life because now I'm the one responsible for cleaning up your mess, kind of a thing. So it's like she does such a good job.
She is so good. Like
bringing in that kind of intensity to the moment.
I do think her performance in this movie is probably the most impressive of all the performances in this movie.
Right.
She may not be the most iconic visual in this movie, but like, what she brings to the table is just. She's given the most challenging things to do in this movie and totally delivers.
And it's believable. Like I can see that being a real person if this situation existed. Yeah.
For sure. David, you want to continue that plot there?
Yeah. And we've touched on quite a bit of this, but for the rest...
the second half will be shorter, I'm sure.
I know.
Yeah.
Over several days of their journey, Sarah sees the T-800 serving as a friend and father figure to John, who teaches it catchphrases and hand signs as well as encouraging it to become more human-like. Sarah plans to flee with John to Mexico until a nightmare about Judgment Day persuades her to kill Dyson, whom she assaults in his home, but finds she cannot kill him and relents. John arrives and reconciles with Sarah while the T-800 convinces Dyson of the future consequences of his work. Dyson reveals his research has been reverse engineered from the 1984 Terminator's damaged CPU and severed arm. Believing his work must be destroyed, Dyson, Sarah, John, and the T-800 break into Cyberdyne, retrieve the CPU and the arm, and set explosives to destroy the lab. The police assault the building and fatally shoot Dyson, but he detonates the explosives as he dies. The T-1000 pursues the surviving trio, eventually cornering them in a steel mill. Sarah and John split up to escape while the T-1000 battles and mangles the T-800 and deactivates it by destroying its power source. The T-1000 assumes Sarah's appearance to lure out John, but Sarah intervenes and repeatedly shoots it, pushing it towards the edge of the platform, which stands above a vat of molten steel. But she runs out of ammunition before it falls. Whoops. The T-800, having been reactivated using an alternate power source, arrives and shoots the T-1000 with a grenade launcher, causing it to fall into the molten steel and disintegrate. John throws the CPU and severed arm into the vat. The T-800 explains it must also be destroyed to prevent its CPU from serving as a foundation for Skynet. The pair hug, and John tearfully orders the T-800 to stay, but it persuades John its destruction is the only way to protect their future. Sarah shakes the T-800's hand, having come to respect it, and helps lower it into the molten lava. Before its destruction, the T-800 gives the humans a thumbs up. Sarah is driving down a highway with John. She reflects on her renewed hope for an unknown future, musing if the T-800 could learn the value of life. And if he can, so can humanity.
I think there is a challenge to making a emotionally satisfying action movie.
Mm-hmm.
And this one nails that blueprint perfectly. But here's something that I think cripples your average action movie. I think the first 2/3 of an action movie, there is leeway for character development, fun interactions, and the occasional action sequence. Whereas the third act is generally just all out mayhem.
Right.
And I know this isn't like this isn't the traditional 3-act structure where the second act is rising action, and then the third act is always generally short and a resolution of that. I'm more talking about in like the set piece, the way we look at set pieces.
Right.
In the third sequence, I feel like you have to have resolved a whole bunch of the fun that these characters can have together, because it is almost put on the back burner in favor of just huge action sequences. I think this movie kind of is a victim to that, in the sense that we do lose some of that, interactivity between the characters that's fun in favor of just all-out mayhem, but it still is able to thread that needle enough and have these satisfying moments throughout. But there's so many action movies, I feel like, that the first 2/3 just don't quite get there, and then by that time it's too late and we're at the final action sequence, and it almost is numbing, in like you're being just punched in the head too much. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I don't know. I feel like that's just like romantic comedies are so crippled by the fact that it always has to be this, like, oh, guy meets girl, but for whatever reason they can't be together, and then, oh, finally we can be together, and oh, it's happy for a little bit, but then something happens, and then they're like, oh, we can't be together.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they're like, oh, actually, we can be together. Like that. Action movies are very much like, ooh, fun setup, couple cool action sequences, but we develop the characters and their interactions together, and it's fun. And then final sequence, drop all of that. Let's just have an all-out shootout that lasts for 30 minutes.
And at the end, we all look at each other and smile.
Yeah, we all wipe off the rubble and we're like happy. In a less successful action movie, it's numbing, and it takes away from, like, you lose that sense of, I don't know, any sort of personality that was built up throughout the first 2 thirds. This one, if I were ever to even come close to faulting it, it almost gets a little too actiony, but then it pulls back at just the right time, and I'm like, oh, never mind, it's perfect. Like it fully threads nearly perfectly and manages to keep the emotion and the interactions between the characters at a high level. I don't know if y'all agree with that.
Yeah, it's really my main thought too. It was T2, too much action.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, like, everyone's going to hate me.
I'm joking.
This is
I know
a
that's not
review
what
for
you
the
meant.
end.
Yeah. No, amazing action. Like, excellent action, I should say. I just like, there's so much of the first 2/3 of the movie that I love of just these three interacting with one another that once they have to kind of put that to the side and just shoot things, I'm like,
miss it.
oh.
You're like, oh,
Like,
I kind of liked what you were doing before.
Yeah. And that said, I still think this is a perfect movie.
Yeah.
But it's just I wanted to see these three together a little more. I want to see the road trip movie of this, all these people, just interacting
just
for a
a
little
road
longer.
trip.
Yeah.
It does make it seem like once, the Terminator has to go, it feels way too soon, which might actually add to that moment.
It might be the positive thing about it. It's like, I cut off too soon.
Yeah, you're like, no, don't go,
I need quirky shenanigans. I need road trip fun where the Terminator teaches John how to shoot a gun in a gas station or something.
I would love that as give me a season of TV, the lost days of these people interacting, Terminator learning how, just them interacting. I'd love it. But let's talk about Dyson, a character played by Joe Morton. I think another great subversion when we didn't have subversions in movies that often, where Sarah Connor in any other movie would be looked at as, a psychotic villain that is going to kill this person. But because of how we're set up in the story, you're like conflicted about what she's doing. You see her as a kind of protagonist, but also an anti-hero in a sense.
Well, this is what Noah was saying earlier in regards to framing. So it's like, because we see what the future is, we can empathize with her.
Yeah.
But man, if you take
in the
away
moment, it doesn't. Yeah.
That knowledge, she's definitely more of like a villain.
Mm-hmm. But she's on the warpath to go take out this Dyson guy, and in a lesser director's hands, or writer's hands, this Dyson character would be written as a one-dimensional villainous character. Who's like, well, I don't care. It's science, and we are progressing.
That's what they all sound like.
Even if it's for the downfall of humanity,
and they'd be twiddling their fingers.
I'll get an award.
But what other movie can you think of that the creator of Skynet, the person who creates something that leads to basically the end of the world, or almost, is a family man who is kind of, unbeknownst to himself, developing this program or this chip, and he's doing it for a positive reason. He thinks they're just, I don't know, this is progression in science, and this is the next thing. And I love that you've got this establishing shot of the kid with his little RC car and the mom and all this stuff, and then you see it's just a total flip, and then you see Sarah Connor with her sniper rifle or whatever it is, just setting up to get rid of this guy, and it's instantly, you feel conflict.
Yeah.
Where that is a master filmmaker in that there's this subplot that this guy's actually he might be doing questionable stuff, but he's kind of he's naive about it. Doesn't realize the problem that he's causing.
Well, it's pulling upon real life where everything is more complicated than just we're the good side, they're the bad side.
Yeah.
You like to think that's the case, but if you were to look at people on a more intimate level, you would see, it's much more complicated than that.
Yeah.
So I like when movies add that feature to it without being too heavy-handed about it, obviously, because you don't want to be preached to by a movie. But it does incorporate those elements, and then immediately you feel more engaged. You know, if it's just good versus evil constantly, you sort of shut your brain off, which is fun sometimes. But if you're wanting to make a classic, those are the kind that stay.
Yeah.
You know?
Also, it's very rare for a movie to introduce a character so late in the runtime, and for you to feel really bad when they die.
His end was just so sad.
I know. Like the way he's breathing, just the
I know. Well, also his
Like
last
that.
words were just like, I don't think I can
hold
hold
on,
this
yeah.
very long, for much longer, or
like
something
so
like
eager
that.
to just give
Yeah, I
his life
know.
for this, and
And then also trying to warn the people coming in. It's like, hey, you better get out because
It's
you
really
know, I can't hold this.
heartbreaking, kind of.
I know. So sad. It feels, if I were to ding this for anything, using a phrase you use, Reese, I think it would be this segment here. It's great still, but the whole period of time between Sarah Connor barging into this dude's mansion or whatever, going to this establishment, getting the chip and the arm, and then him sacrificing himself seems really quick to me.
Yeah.
At least when I watched it, it felt really quick, and there's not much more to that comment other than the fact that it just felt slightly off from the rest of the movie for me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't pinpoint why
I
exactly.
think this is when it tries to fall back into the blueprint of the first movie. Where, you gotta have this chase, there's a big truck.
Right.
There's a crash, and then that...
The other part is that this is when the T-1000 finally shows up again.
Yeah,
after
it was
a long,
weirdly absent for a long time.
quiet period with him.
Yeah, that's another one of my minor criticisms. What was it doing in the meantime here? Was it just like waiting for, maybe something will come my way and I can figure out where they are? It didn't seem like it was being as proactive as it had been for the first third of this movie.
I think there's just something missing in that one sequence that I think could have been tweaked somewhere.
My other criticism, and this could easily be knocked down by someone who is analyzing this movie more closely.
Right.
What was the goal of the T-800? Once it protects John Connor, it's taking him to this location. Then what? Well, it seemed like that it did its mission, kind of, but was just.
I think he knew the T-1000 was there, and that John was not safe until the T-1000 was gone.
No, but he takes him away out far to this outpost or whatever. I guess. I guess at this point, John Connor is making all the orders, and he has to listen to him. So never mind. It's not really that much of a criticism. I would have liked the mission of the T-800 to be spelled out a little bit more for me, other than just protect John Connor
and listen to John Carter.
Yeah,
Connor, not John Carter.
Well, I think some of it's kind of like David was saying, is the best defense is good offense kind of thing. Like, in order for him to protect him, have some finality to it, take care of the problem at its source, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, I know that T-1000's still out there, but I technically saved you. So, yeah, you could deal with him later.
Well, even without having to go on the offensive, his mission is that John Connor survives. So all he has to do is keep him safe.
Well, and I think what Reese was saying, like, how do you determine what that is until, like, his death or until... Because he did technically help him survive, but how long of survival?
Well, I think the goal kind of changed midway, where he is protecting John Connor, but they had established all together that it's because of the arm and the chip that what happens next continues. So once that was eliminated,
it's probably X86.
What?
Bad joke. Sorry.
Oh, I thought you were commenting on something. So Well, what I was saying was basically once they destroyed that, it sort of brought into question, well, this could still happen since T-800 is around.
Yeah.
So he needs to go with the rest of the evidence of a superior AI.
Essentially, T-800 is there until that world-breaking event happens, which is set to happen.
Here's another question.
And they know that that's going to happen.
Here's another question then, and maybe I'm looking too deep into this movie, but why wasn't John Connor's order to this original or to this T-800 that they sent back in time to be like, hey, first mission, save John Connor, second mission, take out Skynet. Like I feel like the main directive was just save John Connor, and maybe I'm working this out in real time, but maybe like he knew that John Connor would then be like, oh, now we've got to go here. But that seems like
preservation of the timeline.
I was going to say, we get complicated with paradox here, but
I think
So
some
what-
of it
what
is also
probably-
recognizing the limitations of the outdated model and compared
Right.
to, what he's fighting up against at the time. And
yeah.
Think about it as just T-800 is, or him sending that back is reactionary to 1000 being sent back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
So it's literally just there to contend with that fact and protect the. So
Right.
it's like, okay, you sent something back.
Don't
well,
give
I
it
need
too
protection.
much, like-
Otherwise, I don't exist.
Do you know what's so weird
You
that
know.
they didn't do, Noah?
What?
Now that I'm thinking about that, how has there not been in any of these sequels, like in these war sequences that they open up with in the future, how have there not been liquid Terminators in those wars?
Whoa.
Like just taking things
Yeah,
out.
it
You
is
always see
interesting.
the typical T-800s walking around.
well, it's probably
Maybe-
the time frame.
Maybe also because they're probably more assassins than they are
yeah.
warriors, I guess.
Still imagine
We're
a
writing
whole-
the script here.
Yeah. No, it's fun to talk about. Like it's a whole world, and that's
Limited
what makes
resources.
it interesting is that you can keep talking.
They only got one, and they
Yeah.
sent it back in time.
So
There you go.
averting criticisms at this point, I want to talk about some smart things this movie does or predicts. And that is how this movie kind of predicts the existential crisis of AI. And we haven't really talked about this at all yet, but this is the big one that like cracks open the nut about like Skynet. And we're not going to have a long conversation.
I don't
about
need
it.
any more existential crisis in my life, man.
No, but apparently, and I was listening to this podcast. I'll listen to a lot of podcasts. Who knows how accurate it is? But one of the biggest existential crises that we face, or crises today that we face, that almost seems inevitable,
Aliens.
that we will be really dumb about how we treat the development of AI, and eventually it will rebel on us. It is, if you look at existential crises, I keep messing that up, but it is environmental and it is AI. Like those are the big one. Like AI actually arguably is the biggest one.
Yeah.
Which at this in 91, yeah, some people were starting to think, oh, what is like the internet is starting to exist and there's robots. That's pretty forward thinking for a big big dumb action movie, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
It is a scary thought. Like there is a actual scenario, and I don't think it would play out in the way of, skeletal metal robots coming to kill us.
Right.
But
you don't know that.
yeah, no, I don't know that. That could happen. But it's crazy to think we are kind of playing with fire when it comes to artificial intelligence. It would be so easy for someone to punch something in wrong and it misinterpret that command as something that means, oh, well, obviously now I have to do this and humans have to die because whatever, I was listening to this podcast called The End of the World, and it's like a 12-episode podcast where each episode is devoted to different things that could potentially result in the end of the world. And the biggest threat was AI out of all those episodes.
Wait, where were aliens on that list?
Nowhere.
Are you kidding me?
Nowhere.
What if aliens created the AI?
Yeah. But the way they spelled it out was kind of scary and believable, where it doesn't play out like Terminator, but it would be someone punching in a command into a computer saying like, hey, solve world hunger.
Whoops, kill all humans. That solves world hunger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the algorithm or the robot thinking like, oh, well,
Yeah.
if there's no humans, there's no hunger.
It's
like
almost like that situation where, like in all those stories where you have like a genie or you're given 3 wishes and you ask for something and you don't realize, oh, that could mean any number of things,
Exactly.
not just the thing I was thinking.
Yeah, all it takes is
Yeah.
one stupid person, which there are many stupid people in this world, making a decision without much thought, and plugging it into something that they shouldn't have access to. But but yeah, it's kind of crazy. I'm not saying it's likely to happen, but it adds something to this movie where you're like, oh, the fact that it adds credibility to this threat in these Terminator movies that AI could eventually control robots and kill people. Kind of cool. I just think it's an interesting element.
I still think aliens are the biggest threat.
Well, they could be. They've found some weird radio waves out in the deep dark space.
I'm just saying, you actually, Reese, I blame you because you sent me a podcast that was explaining the Great Filter or whatever. And
no, that's the same podcast.
Yeah, and it terrified me, and I stopped listening to it.
I think there's a definite possibility that there's life out there, but that's a different discussion.
We should start a new
We
podcast.
need Giorgio on this podcast. What's his name? Giorgio Tsoukalos.
No, we need the singer from Blink-182 because apparently he's big on UFOs now.
Oh, great.
Everyone is now.
He's an expert.
Yeah, all right. Fast forward to the finale here. We did have the big shootout in the Skynet location where they destroyed the arm and the chip. Then, of course, as all these movies have to do, they end in a chase, and then they end, and that results in a face-off at what is this place called? It's like
not a factory.
A Denny's.
Yeah, it is a factory, but there's a specific name for it.
A foundry.
AJ, you should
feel
like you know this.
A foundry.
Yeah, it would.
Foundry.
It would be because they had that large words. I don't work at one, so
You don't?
no.
Oh, okay. But yeah, we have this. First, what I want to highlight this sequence where before they get to the foundry, there's this. They freeze the T-1000. It's like the dry ice or whatever it is.
Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, and this. By the way, do you know how they did this sequence?
Oh,
David, I know
know.
you
Oh,
have
I
to
know. I do.
Since you're that guy, tell us.
Well, I mean, all right, I can, but I do have a list. I was going to actually ask for like a CGI corner, but do you want me to?
No, that's
You
too
can
much
have a
to ask.
CGI
We're
corner right
talking
now.
about
Let's
it
talk
now.
about it. But start with the T-1000 kind of cracking, the ice sequence where he gets frozen.
I actually don't know that one.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll
fired.
fill you in on that one. So the sequence where the T-1000 is frozen, apparently, they actually had an amputee in this role. They had someone who did not have a leg, and when that first scene when there's actually the cracking, that is the amputee without a leg breaking out of that. So it looked like he lost the leg, and they intercut it with Robert Patrick, who is also doing
The same scene.
Yeah, the same scene. And I didn't catch it, but they spliced these two scenes together to where it looks almost seamless. The way, it's breaking out of that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. It's so cool though, seeing him get frozen and then breaking out of it, and then the way the foundry, the heat of the foundry just heats up the shattered pieces of him and how they all come together and
Like
then form him
mercury.
again. It's it's so cool. But David, take it away.
I mean, CGI corner, I guess. That's what I'm going to call it because, and I like to reserve these for movies that deserve it, you know? I
Which
feel
this
like
one does.
This one 100% does. And we've kind of brought up a little bit before, a little preamble that I wrote, kind of goes over the big developments in CGI for modern movies. And a lot of people point to Terminator 2 as like the pinnacle of that transition. But like you brought up earlier, The Abyss, that was also very big. That one used CGI in an effective way. It also, James Cameron, it didn't quite capture the realism that people were looking for just yet, but it was a stepping stone. But this is where it really came together.
Yeah.
So this was groundbreaking in terms of special effects, but it was effective, it was realistic, and it was super risky also because no one had done this before. So if they didn't land, this could have like tore the whole movie apart.
Yeah.
I mean, this could have
Breaks
been
you out of that.
massively ineffective, like if it just didn't work. But luckily, there's a lot of people who are passionate about this movie in all aspects. The actors, the people working on the CGI, the practical effects. James Cameron obviously is not very passionate about his stuff. We all know this.
Not at all.
But yeah, there's a lot of passion in this movie. But this movie used so many forms of effects. So like not just CGI. It covers the gamut. This is why we've had an argument, Reese.
Runs the gamut.
The gamut. Thank you. I say so many things that are wrong.
No, you're good.
I think the 90s are one of my favorite decades of movies, and movies like this are reasons why. Groundbreaking stuff, but they used a lot of different effects in this. So one of which was rear screen projection, which is a old technique. I'm sure we've all heard of it, but if you haven't, it's where if you can't do certain scenes, think of like car scenes where you get the angle of the person driving it, but you can't actually get in front of the car while it's driving. So what do? You end up shooting them in a car that's stationary. You get a green screen, not a green screen a lot of the time. You actually record the backdrop you want and then play it from behind in a not reverse, but like a reflective.
And it's almost so obvious, always obvious.
Yeah. And in this movie, it's kind of obvious when it's, on screen because we're so used to it, but it's gotten really good nowadays.
My rule of thumb not rule of thumb, but the way I go into that is if it is obvious but still tastefully done and with craft, I still respect and appreciate it.
I think this movie does that.
Yeah, but if it's obvious
singles?
in a way that looks cheap, I dismiss it.
Yep. And in this movie, they do a really good job. Most of the action sequences involving cars, I mean, it was all over the place. And aside from a couple interior car scenes, it was hard to actually tell because they did the lighting so well, because they have to match the lighting of the person with that original video they recorded. But anyway, that's one of the things. Something that I learned about this movie in practical effects that is super cool that they easily could have done in CGI probably at the time was in the early parts of the movie where the Terminators arrive and the burn marks on the fences and on the metal around them, it's burned off.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And you see that glowing metal. All they did was put tape, like this reflective tape, metal tape on it.
I was theorizing of how they did this. So I'm curious. I was thinking they'd use fluorescent paint or something on the edge and just. It was
a kind of reflective tape, and it was something they took from somebody that worked on Superman, like one of the old Supermans. Oh, cool. It's like from the 1950s, where they put this reflective tape on the corners of things, and if you hold the camera at the right angle, it looks like it's glowing, and that's why when the camera turns, it looks like the glowing is fading like cooling metal.
That's cool.
And I was watching it over and over again. I was like, that does look like freaking glowing metal.
They're wizards, man.
And it's simple, and it costs nothing. That as far as the aspect of money goes, that's simple.
Yeah.
But let's see. They also use different types of cell animation. So whenever they go back in and have to go frame by frame into the specific cells to add color or something. So think lightning. That's the biggest thing they use cell animation for in this movie. The same thing. It's very similar to Highlander. You remember the lightning and stuff? Same kind of thing.
I like that effect, even though it's fakey.
Yeah, it's fakey, but it works. I think this was actually better than the Highlander one for sure. Again, stop motion. I brought this up earlier. They use stop motion in some of those were they T-1000s where they showed the future where they were not T-800s. The metal?
No, there's T-800s.
Okay, they were T-800s.
Wait, not the metal?
Like the ones in the beginning where they're not the metal.
No, T-800s,
okay.
yeah.
So the T-800s, they still use stop animation, which is crazy because they obviously had animatronics. I don't know why they did that. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. But they did it. But also, they used miniatures, which are very big in movies, and it doesn't seem like those are going away anytime
Miniatures
soon.
are very big.
Miniatures are very big in the movie industry.
Yep.
And we saw that in the first movie a lot too. But the scene where the Los Angeles is decimated by that
was
atomic
miniature.
bomb.
Yeah, I did read that.
All miniature, man. Crazy
There were
stuff.
people that nuclear specialists, I guess, who saw this movie and were like, that is the most accurate depiction of what a nuclear blast would do to a city.
That's scary because that did not look fun.
No, it did not look fun.
No. So let's see. Another thing they used were practical puppets again, which is something they did a lot in the first movie, a little bit less in this movie.
There's some by the way, if you've seen The Thing by John Carpenter, there's some practical effects in this when the T-1000 is getting blown apart that are very reminiscent of the practical effects in The Thing.
Like when it splits in half.
Yeah, exactly.
I know what you're talking about. But practical puppets, so like Arnold, I still don't know why they do some, like the ways they choose to do this, because you can do so many different variations to get the same outcome. But you know when Arnold is walking and those people are shooting at him in the hallway towards the latter half of the movie, and his face is kind of chipping off and exploding. Well, they're like, well, we can't really have Arnold do that and put explosives on his face. And we don't really have the CGI to do it quite yet. So they rebuilt him in like from the torso up, kind of similar to the first, but way better. It looked like a real person. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And they rigged explosives in its face and had it walk down there, and they shot blanks at it while igniting these explosives. And you rewatch it and you're like, that's not Arnold? You're like, wait, what?
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
I didn't even know that.
So that's one of the miniature model things they do. Oh, practical puppets, I mean. Also, if you didn't know this, lots of stunt doubles that are twins in this movie.
Oh yeah, Linda Hamilton's
her sister,
twin sister,
sister. Used
she's only
twice
used
in this.
she's used once, and the other scene was cut. There's like a
mirror.
Yeah, there's a mirror scene that was cut.
I am so mad they didn't include that. I don't know if if the rest of you saw that clip, but it's so good, and I don't know why they didn't include it.
Yeah.
But
it's crazy.
I guess in that scene, they were supposed to. I think Linda Hamilton's character, Sarah Connor, asked the Terminator, "Can you learn?" And he's like, "I need to be programmed to learn. Basically, I got to take my chip out of my brain, and that's how we do it." And so they had a scene where they show her taking like the metal cap off his head and reaching in to like take the chip out. But you see a reflection in a mirror, and that's how you're seeing it. So you see the backside of the Terminator and the backside of Sarah Connor, and then the front of them in the mirror. But turns out it's not a mirror. They cut a hole and replicated the set in reverse.
Gosh.
And reflected it, and then they just all moved at the same time. So Sarah Connor, the back of her is actually played by her twin sister, and then the Terminator is played by a stunt double. But it's insane how well that works out. Also,
I love it.
At the end, like we were talking about, Sarah Connor, the T-1000 pretends to be her. And that's actually her sister, which is super cool because I never would have guessed.
That's awesome. Yeah,
they got really lucky that she had a twin sister.
Ugh.
Anyway, that was David's CGI corner or effects corner.
Dude, I loved it. We need more CGI production corners. So let's talk about the finale of this movie real quick. So we do have the final confrontation between the T-1000 and the T-800. I love how much hell T-1000 puts T-800 through. Just like the whole ramming things into his head and into his body, crushing him with various things, stabbing him with different things, just really just dominating him in every single freaking way. And then it gets to the point where the T-1000 really looks like it's about to win the day. And it's turned one of its appendages into a blade and is about to just impale Sarah Connor. And T-1000 still has some juice and they're able to fight it back via shotgun and other actions and push it into the pit, the lava. It's not lava. It's like a lava pit.
It's molten.
Yeah, molten something or whatever.
It's molten steel.
Yeah, molten steel. And we see the T-1000 just writhing in pain. In various stages, it turns into the people that it's killed over the course of the movie.
So that's such a cool addition to this that they didn't need to do, but it really, really makes it better.
Yeah. And finally, I don't think Lord of the Rings is influenced by many things, but it definitely takes... if I had to say the Lord of the Rings is influenced by one thing, it's the scene where ultimately... after all this turmoil, this metal thing dissipates into the fluid.
The Gollum scene at the end.
Yeah, just like that, where Gollum falls into the lava, and then the ring is just sitting there like, I don't want to die. And then it's like, okay, fine.
That's literally what it says if you haven't seen the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, by the way, I left out the whole It's funny, I didn't write it down, but I remembered. I don't know why I didn't write it down. I have a whole thing about this whole latter half of the steel mill scene,
Yeah.
they did so many things that like would not fly nowadays.
Oh, like what? Like, in terms of safety? Yeah. Oh, there's a ton of stuff in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, you go to the first action sequence where, like, apparently, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger was actually on the motorcycle at times, like, pivoting on the motorcycle with the shotgun, doing all these various maneuvers that were not safe. There was also the helicopter flying under the bridge, which was actually practically done. And that was the person who piloted that helicopter, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think they were told by James Cameron to do it, and reluctantly they were like, okay, we'll do it. And then after that, because it was incredibly risky, he was like, I'm never working with James Cameron again, like, because of that helicopter stunt going under the bridge. But what's the stuff with the foundry?
Well,
like,
they actually, this is an old steel mill that they bought out that was, completely capable of, doing stuff like that. But they built out all these rigs for this fake lava. They used a ton of vegetable oil, or not vegetable oil, just some form of oil mixed with powdered sugar and lighting to get that lava effect, which looks super cool. Not that was the concern, but they also had a bunch of people on set with arc. What are those called? The arc. AJ, help me out. Welding
reactors.
Tools. Arc welders, yeah. And they had all of these guys stationed to just shoot these welders all across, so sparks were constantly flying, which is definitely not recommended nowadays. They also had lights and explosives everywhere. They were also filling the entire room with smoke constantly to do all this.
looked like it.
Yeah. It wasn't recommended, but also it was super cold in that room to keep everything flowing well, which is ironic because the scene is very hot.
Yep.
So people kept drying out really quickly, so they had to constantly be spraying the actors with water while it was cold to keep them looking.
Don't want to get heat stroke either.
Yeah, to look like they couldn't get heat stroke because
I thought you said it was hot.
No, it was cold in there.
Oh,
But it's
gotcha.
ironic because the scene is in there's lava and stuff, so they're supposed to be sweating, but they weren't sweating because it was so cold, so they constantly had to spray them with water to get them look like they were sweating.
Gotcha.
Wow. Dude, that's crazy. I did not know that. I knew about all the dangers of the earlier scenes, but not the foundry scene.
Yeah.
What are y'all's final thoughts on this the finale here? We have the iconic the Terminator. Once everything's done, he's like, I can't self-terminate. He gives the control to to Linda Hamilton or Sarah Connor, and he grabs onto the chain and is slowly lowered down into the stuff.
The molten steel.
Yeah, the molten steel. Why can't I remember that? Yeah, he's slowly lowered down into the molten steel, gives the thumbs up, and that is the end of him. And following that, they're sad, but they drive off and into the still somewhat bleak future. Thoughts on the end here?
I'll be back.
I'll be back.
Yep.
Effective.
It is one of those really memorable moments with the thumbs up out of the molten
Yes.
steel.
Yeah.
Actually, I will say this was the scene that like stuck in my brain the most as a child. I remember watching this with my dad.
This is the scene that makes people cry.
Yeah.
Like it's
I don't know about that.
No, it does.
It does.
No, there are plenty of people out there. You might not.
I cry easily.
No, I know. I know.
You cry for like the weird things like like Yetis and football.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
I do tear up
Mummies.
about mummies.
Brendan
Mummies
Fraser.
and-
Oh, well, that's understandable.
I cry about Brendan Fraser too.
Yeah.
But they're tears of joy.
Yeah, but no, you might not cry at it. But that scene is so important to a lot of people. Just
It does
No,
make
it's
you-
iconic.
thumbs up.
It's iconic.
Even if you don't cry, you feel something.
No, that's
Yeah.
why I said I remembered it. If of all the scenes, that's the one I remember the
So-
most as a child.
So
is
let
that scene.
me give you just insight as to why it might make someone cry.
Wow.
So
thank you.
No,
Please.
and
Enlighten me.
No, I'm just saying.
We are.
Early on, the Terminator is viewed through Sarah Connor's eyes as a father figure, someone that John Connor never had, or something that John Connor never had, and he is kind of they're quickly over the course of a couple days bonded, but they have an obvious connection, and this through all of the turmoil that they go through, this person who is kind of symbolically a father.
It's a family movie, as Noah said.
Yeah,
exactly.
John Connor has to give his life to save him, and even though it's this robotic thing, it has managed to sort of demonstrate human characteristics and gives him the thumbs up at the end, which is it's almost like a confirmation that there's more going on in this robot than just, I am just obeying commands.
Don't forget the line just before this where he like moves the tear from.
Yeah, he's like, I
his
understand
eye.
why you cry or something. And he says,
he's like, I
understand why you
can't
cry."
do it, but I understand why you cry.
Yeah.
And that was him telling him, like,
That's a good
I'd be
line.
crying if I could.
Which shows that this model is capable of learning and understanding. And it just makes that moment sad and uplifting at the same time. Just this last bit of, despite I know that I will not exist, this character, this entity cares enough to do this last gesture to John Connor to be like, I'm okay, thumbs up. I learned something from this, and you're going to be all right. It just means a lot, and and I could see like why it's tear jerking in a way. It is.
Yep.
It reminds me of my childhood.
Yeah. But so good. Just such a perfect like button on the end of this movie. It's one of those things where as a kid I was like, no, why does he have to die? And then as an older as I've matured,
As an
I'm
older
like,
kid.
yeah, exactly. As I've matured, I'm like, I understand why he has to die, but it's sad. So yeah, and
Still hits.
By the way, there's people that say this should have ended the franchise, ended it too, but I think this movie very much sets up the future.
Does
for this
it?
franchise? I think it does. They're like driving off into and it's fully like kind of.
But they stopped Skynet.
It has this. It doesn't feel optimistic like it should. It feels like there's
Skynet.
The vibe you get from the end of this movie is that there's still a battle to be fought.
They stopped.
They did
Skynet,
but you don't get the sense that it's over.
So do you know there was actually another ending?
What was the other? No, I didn't know.
Oh, so James Cameron had it, and he thought it was too positive, so they took it out.
Okay.
And it was actually a future scene, and they fully recorded it. You could look it up of Sarah Connor and John Connor in the future in like 2060 or 2070. I don't know. They're really old, and it's like this utopian society, and they're both really happy. And she's like, "Man, we made it past that time period where we all would have died."
It sounds kind of like the Titanic alternate ending, which was just really weird and didn't fit.
Another
the movie
James
at
Cameron
all.
movie.
Yeah,
Weird.
No, that's why I brought it up.
Both
It's
times he cut it out.
I like how he has so many moments in his career where he's like, "Oh, I have this idea," and then later he's just like, "Nah,
Never mind."
no."
If they left it
maybe
though,
not.
can you imagine how hard that would have affected the outcome of this?
Yeah.
this
So basically, what you're
franchise?
saying is proving Reese's point that it's not necessarily meant to be over.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously
That
we have sequels.
He thought of that
Yeah.
as too positive. So
All right. Any final thoughts on Terminator 2's story before we close out this portion of the podcast? AJ, got anything? Noah?
Good. It's good.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, and on the other end, we'll get into our brief reviews with numbered scores, talk some box office, and then close out with a little bit of franchise talk.
Welcome back. Get out.
Why we just got here?
No, we've been here.
Welcome back. Let's talk Terminator 2 Judgment Day. David, you got our scores there in a bowl. Can you pull them at random for me, please?
First.
Here, let's hear our judgment. of this film.
You know what would be just very apropos?
Please don't say that.
You know what would be great is if we started with Reese
That would be great. Let's do it.
with a 10.
Nice.
Yeah, look, this is another one of those movies where I can poke holes where I want to, and I did throughout our review. But ultimately, in my mind, it is still a 10 for everything it does right. There are certain things to me in this movie that are beyond 10. So any moments where it is below a 10, I absolve it for. It's the epitome of the ultimate action movie. Almost every dynamic of this film is calculated to perfection. This is probably my favorite James Cameron movie.
Wow.
Well, think about the others. I mean, yeah, he's directed some very great movies. Titanic is amazing. Avatar's good. Aliens is amazing. I know there's people screaming at me for Aliens, but I'm one of the weird ones that I think I'm not weird, but Alien is better than Aliens. Just straight up, it is.
I think I agree.
Yeah, Alien is just so good. It's a masterpiece.
Well, it's a horror too.
Yeah, and Aliens is a action movie with aliens in it that's very, very well done. But this is perfectly calibrated summer blockbuster entertainment. It is one of the ultimate tentpole movies that defined just summer action and just really, I don't know. It just is, for one, it was like an exclamation mark at the end of Schwarzenegger's career. Like he had one big hit after this movie, but this was actually weirdly kind of the end of his career. But at this point, he looked unstoppable.
That's a weird thing to say, considering how much he did after this.
No, he did a lot after this that was successful, but this and True Lies were his last like absolutely enormous movies.
So like Viggo Mortensen, his career ended with Lord of the Rings.
Okay, that's a weird comparison, but sure. Like I think when I think of Schwarzenegger, I think a good comparison is like The Rock. Like whereas The Rock hasn't. Okay, never mind. That's not good.
Yeah, it's not.
I'll say Jim Carrey, and I know they're completely different, but Jim Carrey had this just massive phase where like every movie was hit, and now he just kind of does solid like one pointers where it's just, you know, he gets to first base.
How about this? It's like the tipping point. It's not that there wasn't anything good after, it's just that this was the height, and from here, even if it's only slightly, it's a downward trend.
Yeah.
It's like Ian McKellen in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Whatever.
It's kind of like it's kind of like
you just keep going back to Lord of the Rings. Are you trying to?
It's kind of like John Rhys Davies with Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of
Could you
like
imagine?
it's kind of like
stop.
Sean
You shall not
Astin
pass. Stop.
with Lord of the Rings.
Could you imagine like all these, like an alternate universe where at the top of the poster, instead of Schwarzenegger, it says Rhys Davies? Like,
It just doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it?
Okay, but back to the review. I think Terminator, the franchise, and especially with Terminator 2, is just one of the coolest things in cinema. And Terminator 2 is the one that does it the best of the bunch. Like, and so how can you not award it a 10 for being the best installment of a franchise that is regarded as one of the most iconic franchises?
Are you
like
saying that we have nothing else to look forward to after
No,
this?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying this is it is a peer to the best of the best. Like it's in that friend group, you know,
with honors.
It's rubbing shoulders with some of the best other franchises, and yeah, just think about the concept. Terminator sent back in time. The original Terminator that you knew as the villain is actually now the savior of John Connor, and then you have this new Terminator that's even more terrifying in Robert Patrick's T-1000, the Liquid Terminator. It's the ultimate like evolution of that concept, and they face off, and despite the odds, the T-800 still wins the battle, and it has this like slight amount of humanity that what you're thinking about is like, oh, does it actually feel, or is it still just like a program? Like that's the big debate you have after this.
It's like it's got a lot of heart.
Yeah, and the thumbs up is almost a confirmation that, oh, maybe it does feel something. Who knows? Like it's just, it's so good. This movie is,
and it's about family too.
Family.
It's kind of like
an
Fast
underdog.
and Furious.
yeah.
Oh God. This is an underdog.
There are
story, too.
cars.
We
There's
love,
car chases.
We love a good
explosions.
Cinderella story in America. So.
Anyway, to cap it off, I think this is the perfectly calibrated action movie. They've never been able to recapture this movie. It's lightning in a bottle. I love it. 10 out of 10, even though it does have flaws here and there.
All right, one more question. Terminator 2 or Sicario?
Terminator 2.
All right, moving on.
I love Sicario, though. I do love it. Yeah.
Next up, AJ with a 10.
All right.
Yeah, so
Whoa.
calibrated is a good word for it. Really, from the opening of this movie to the close of it, it's just dead on in terms of tone, in terms of, I mean, we didn't really talk much about the music, but the theme, just the opening, the flames.
Oh, yeah. How did we
mean,
not talk about the music? My God. So good.
It immediately takes me back to, like, I feel the same kind of dull, I don't know, just kind of backseat terror that I first saw this movie in every time I watch this. It just always consistently dials into making me think the same things, feel the same things, and it never gets old, never gets, tried or worn out or anything. It's just very balanced in terms of, it's got a certain amount of sci-fi to it, a certain amount of action to it, a certain amount of family dynamic, human, complexity.
Yeah.
As well as you have your kind of trifecta of your cast. You have your young man growing, finding his way in the world, the protector, the stoic, AI representative or robot, and the twist on all that they've done with the second movie, and Linda Hamilton's Sarah Connor, which is still, I think, one of the strongest female characters in a lot of film, even till today. And that's, Cameron did that even with Titanic. We talked about in that episode here,
it's so weird that it took them so long. It took until Mad Max Fury Road for them to get like another, like almost not quite equal. I still think Sarah Connor is better, but like another strong female protagonist in the same vein.
Yeah. And, you can just watch this movie just for the action. It's very memorable, just visually, auditorially, the quotability alone. These were Arnold's lines. A lot of them come from this movie, and we talked about briefly, whether kids will see this movie the same way as people who grew up with it, whether, it ages itself or it's dated or the effects, but the permanence of the impact of this movie, in terms of just social impact and pop culture, and then lasting effects on cinema as well and the industry. It's just, it's massive. I don't know how else to put it. It's a juggernaut. This Terminator.
Yeah, it's the Terminator. That's the best. It's the Terminator.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's definitely, you can find flaws in anything, but just it's dialed in. It's there.
Agreed.
Yeah, 10. It's perfect.
I love the 2 10s. Let's see where we go next. Next up, we have Noah with a 9.5.
Ugh.
You can't
So
be insulted
close,
by
so
a 9.5.
I think he was just hoping for the perfect 10.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm wishy-washy on my on my 10s. Sometimes I'm like, I forgive certain faults, and other times I'm like, well, there has to be an just this wall that it has to peer over for me to give it a 10. And this one's like right on the edge of that.
I will remind you gave Blade Runner 2049 a 10. Would you?
I love Blade Runner 2049.
Okay.
I absolutely love 2049.
Better than T2?
I can't compare them. They're both sci-fi, but they're very different.
I'll say it. It's better.
Which one?
Do you like how vague that was? We'll leave it there.
Okay. No, I was weighing it between 9.5 and 10, and because I was weighing it, I decided, well, maybe it should be 9.5 for me, if that makes sense.
It does.
And I think it does do a lot of things perfectly, and without it, we wouldn't have other things that are like if you rated something a 10 for how classic it was, this would be a 10, but also, you know, I'm trying not to do that too much.
You know?
Well, I do have different standards, but it's also hard for me to keep to my own standards sometimes because my thoughts on things change, and maybe, you know, next week I'm gonna be like, you should have put that as a 10. But I love this movie. It's a family movie.
You keep telling the people.
It's a family movie. I really love the characters. I love Arnold Schwarzenegger. It is a stone cold classic. The direction they go with each with this story from the first one is, you know, it's great. And I wish that I could unsee it so that I could rewatch it fresh without knowing what happens. The same way I would for I won't spoil it or anything, but Sixth Sense. And
yep.
You know, there's stuff like that where I wish I could go back to a point where I didn't know and just watch it and enjoy it that way. But I can't. And while I do love this movie, I don't want to necessarily give it an absolute 10 because I don't know.
It doesn't feel right. That's all.
It just doesn't feel. Yeah, that exactly. I think it's like a preference 10. I don't like. I think I have to. I think my 10s are usually biased. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. I know what you mean.
Anyways,
At least you're admitting
that's
it.
it. Yeah.
He knows what he's about.
Yeah.
Next up, Irina with a 9.5.
With a 2.
With a 2. Yeah, I love this movie, but I hate it at the same time. No. So I can't really expound on anything that hasn't been said before. I think for the most part, we all love this movie for the same exact reasons.
Yeah.
And that is why it is such a crowd pleaser and became such a box office hit. So, outside of the lasting legacy, I think this movie is one where if I were to divide it into segments, there are moments of it that are a perfect 10 film. And then there's just one moment for me that isn't fully a 10. So that's why. And kind of like you, I felt the same way, Noah, where you're kind of waffling on where to put this. But then you realize, if I'm debating it so much, then, you know, there are other movies I gave a 10 without question. Like I just wrote it down.
Yeah,
So why
exactly.
am I hesitating on this one?
Yeah.
So if I were able to put different decimals in there, other than I know we do like
Wait,
this half point
are you
system.
giving this a 9.5 because Arnold Schwarzenegger's hairline isn't completely even?
Yeah, it's receding. It bothers me.
And it's spiky.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
What's wrong with receding hairlines?
Nothing. So
Not so bad as balding.
I think if we were given the option to do more direct decimal points on these scores, it would
You're splitting
probably be
hairs.
a 9.8.
Yeah,
But
something
you
like
know,
that.
where I'm just putting it on 9.5 because I find the whole segment of going to the facility finding Dyson, while I do enjoy that sequence, there's something about it that where everything else had this very intentional moment and it felt vast, that felt like a very small world in my mind. Like everything happened too quickly. And that's really my only problem with the movie. So everything else is great, for all the same reasons that you guys have already said. So that's me.
That's that.
That's that. And next up, last but not least, David.
Which is you.
It's me. With a 9.5. And guess what? We're making that a 10, baby. Let's go.
Nice. Woo!
Wait,
Way to kiss butt, David.
Where are we going?
I love it.
We're going to Pound Town, baby.
Pound Town?
Yeah, Dripping Springs.
There you
go.
Continue.
That's an inside joke amongst Dripping Springers.
Going to Pound Town, baby. I love to hear it.
I'm just saying, like, I decided while we were talking about it, and it was the same kind of line for Irina and Noah, where it's kind of like 9.5, 10. I don't know. I'm gonna lean on the 9.5 side. You caught me in a good mood today. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, having it on in the background, reading through some of the stuff. I'm a sucker for CGI stuff. This was revolutionary. Love me some Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know. It's a great movie. And I'm not deciding between like the 10 across the board, so I don't feel that bad. So you know what? Let's raise it up to a 10. That's all I gotta say.
I thought you were going to raise it past a 10. You're like,
You know what?
raise
Screw
it up
that.
to
Let's
an
do
10.5. 10.10. Woo! Love to hear it. Okay, cool. AJ, you want to crunch those numbers for us?
All right. So Terminator 2 has a group average of 9.8, which ties it with Sicario, which David brought up, actually.
Yeah, that's funny.
We have a couple perfect 10s, which were Blade Runner 2049 and Good Will Hunting. And then we also have a pair of 9.7s, which were The Good, Bad, and the Ugly and The Shining.
Good company. Good company for Terminator 2.
We have two perfect 10s out of 120 movies.
Mm-hmm. You know what I'm thinking these days? I think I might have said this before, but we really should add, like, you know how we have our 10s, right?
Yep.
There needs to be like one step above it where if someone thinks this is transcendent, they can give it like a star.
You want like a golden buzzer,
like a gold, not a gold buzzer that ensures it goes by, but you can individually say, "Well, I think this one's transcendent."
Well,
I'm going to give it a star.
That will come to be. Yeah, that will come to be when we inevitably talk about Lord of the Rings.
Well, yeah, but if you started early,
I don't know any other movies.
All right, 9.8 for Terminator 2. I can't be upset about that. That's really good. Awesome.
Did you say 9.2?
9.8.
Oh, I thought
Did
you
I say 9.8?
I think you
did. I say 9.8?
I thought you
9.8 for Terminator 2. I cannot be upset about that. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 93%. With an audience score of 95%.
Who's the idiotic 7% that's like, oh, I don't recommend this, guys.
Like, your time is better spent watching something else. If you're looking for stellar action films.
Have you ever seen Terminator 2?
What were we going to the?
I prefer Downton Abbey.
I was going more for the brain fog.
What?
You're going? He just couldn't think of it. That's fine.
Never ending story too.
Critics, Rotten Tomatoes.
No.
Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes 93% for critics, 95% for audiences. On Metacritic, a couple of people got hit on their heads, and this movie, from a critical standpoint, has a 75 out of 100, whereas the audience has an 8.9 out of 10, and on IMDb, it is very high at an 8.6 out of 10. So almost unanimously positive there. There's a couple of weirdos out there that apparently don't think you should watch this movie. Okay,
Is that the hill
I'm
they
not
want
gonna
to die
stump
on?
just for the movie because I picked it, but there are certain times when like a movie will come out that's an event where even if you don't like it, you should still tell people to see it so that they can at least have their opinion on it. Like, say, Star Wars Rise of Skywalker was very polarizing. So a lot of critics didn't like it. Even if I had watched that movie and didn't like it, I would still tell people, like, hey, I didn't like this, but it's Star Wars, so go see it and have your own opinion about it. Like,
well, if it's well made and well directed, that's kind of an asshat thing to do, to be like, not good. You're like, no, it is good. I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Also, when you tell someone like, oh, it's not good, it does dampen their want to go see it. And then they might see it later, not in theaters, and think, oh, this was actually good. I liked it. Why did everyone say it was bad?
So my thing to critics is that, hey, if if there is a cultural movement for a movie, and people move me,
I will
like
move
that.
you.
Yeah, and the general consensus is that people love it. Write that in your review. Say like, hey, I'm maybe the odd duck here. Most people love this. Maybe you should watch this. But me personally, I didn't really like it.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be a consideration for things like a Terminator or a
think
Star
Lord
Wars.
of the Rings, when they watched it, it won so many awards, and there's like 2% of people are like, eh.
I just sometimes
Like, what are you saying? Like, oh, you should definitely not watch Star Wars.
Definitely not worth it. Never.
Sometimes when I read negative reviews, I just imagine this person sitting down at their desk and they have their little glossary opened up next to them, or, you know, a dictionary, and they're like, this movie was... flips through some pages to find the word they're looking for, morbid or whatever. Like, they always have these really elaborate words for what they're saying.
What was the word we learned yesterday?
Oh, a cruciverbalist.
Yes.
Cruciverbalist?
Yes.
What?
Any guesses?
No.
Wait, cruciverbalist.
Yeah.
Hold on. So verb and crucible. It's like
cross talking.
It's like a battle.
Pretzel.
It's a pretzel.
What did AJ say?
Verbal pretzels.
Oh, I thought you said something before that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's sort of
something about crucifixion.
What AJ is saying is pretty.
It's like an
close
attack
to what it
on the
means.
words.
Cruciverbalist. Somebody who is good at crosswords.
Oh,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, so it is like AJ said, a word pretzel sometimes.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I just think that reviews of movies that are unanimously loved should come with a disclaimer, like, hey, for whatever reason, I suck and I didn't like this movie, and here's why, but maybe you should watch it.
This got 11
if you're
Oscars.
reading
Couldn't be me watching this again.
You're reading a review, you're reading an op-ed, it's kind of assumed that this is your opinion.
Yeah. All right, box office. This movie released wide on July 5th in 1991. Also playing at the time was The Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear.
I wonder if those reviewers were like, loved Naked Gun.
You should watch this.
Dude, Naked Gun is amazing.
Recommend.
Yeah. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. That's the Kevin Costner one. Yep. City Slickers, Problem Child 2, and The Rocketeer.
All right, we got a couple good movies in there.
Yep, the movie was budgeted at a record $102 million, which I will do inflation for this one. That inflates to $222 million in today's dollars. Which in today's dollars, there are plenty of movies that cost more than $222 million.
Yeah, that's actually not as much. Even
It's
inflated.
big. It's big, but it's not like Avengers Endgame or anything like
Titanic, though.
Titanic was $200 million in 1997.
Yeah.
So probably inflated higher to this one for sure.
Yeah.
All right. With that said, what do y'all think this movie did worldwide? This time I'm going to start with you, AJ.
Ooh, let's
And it's inflated, by the way. So
yeah.
That is big, but like,
Let's flip the shotgun out. Shoot from the hip here. Do some fancy flips here. Let's say 650.
650, and that is inflated. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, David.
Can you give me the inflated starter again?
Budget $222 million.
I couldn't think of budget, so I said starter.
Inflated starter.
So is this an
Did you say
appetizer?
Hey, I'm trying to make a movie. Can I get a starter of $50 million?
Did you say 220?
Yeah.
$222 million.
Holy cow. I'm gonna go ahead and say 900 million.
All right. Irina?
Wow. Well, the first number in my head was 600, so I'll just go with the 600.
And AJ, you said 650, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
All right. Noah.
$1.1 billion.
Compared to rupees, good.
Noah, I would almost accuse you of cheating, but I know you don't do that because the movie is inflated with inflation. It would come out to today's dollars to be 1.13
Wow.
billion.
Wow.
That was a good guess.
I wanted to say 1 billion, but I was too afraid to go for it.
So Noah, you were still slightly under by 30 million.
Well, I was just thinking about
300
like the
million.
other things
300
that
million.
I could compare it
Probably.
to.
And I really
No, 30 million.
underestimated like
You're right.
the blockbuster potential.
Yeah,
of this
I would say
movie.
this is like one of the OG summer blockbusters.
Yeah, and this another thing y'all underestimated. It's James Cameron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This guy just knows how to.
He's got the Midas touch.
You just know
yeah.
the production company was just like,
Ooh.
like this was the Titanic before Titanic. Okay, Jurassic Park was the Titanic before Titanic. There are bigger.
but this was
movies
the Jurassic Park
Yeah.
before Jurassic Park.
Yeah, there's bigger movies than Terminator
Yeah.
2, but this movie was huge. This is to give you an idea about how huge this movie is.
How
it has,
huge was it?
No, it has 4 sequels, none of which are that successful, but they kept making sequels because they were like, it's Terminator. Like,
Hold on, time out. Did James Cameron direct any of those?
No.
Oh, wait. Oh, really?
Yeah, no, but
really?
what I'm saying is like there's such faith in the brand of
Yeah.
Terminator.
No,
There
it
is.
sounds like the faith
going
was
back to the
misplaced
well because
and that it
it's-
should have been James Cameron.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. It's just, the Terminator name speaks because of Terminator 2, not because of Terminator 1, which was a success, granted, but Terminator 2 really was the big like shotgun blast into the
Nice.
the stratosphere. Like it is. This is officially like I'm here. Terminator is big. Like
I think they misread it. I think it's a James Cameron thing, not a Terminator thing.
no,
No.
I think it's both. I think it is both. Like I think
If he directed the third or fourth, we would have a completely different franchise.
I'm not gonna spoil the future for you, but the future Terminator movies they still make money, but they're not successful on the level of this. So
Not 1.13 billion.
what I'm saying,
Got it.
What I'm saying is Terminator can survive without James Cameron, but it is really that marriage that makes this thing happen. So you're right in that sense. But they didn't like fall off a cliff completely to the point where it was like, wow, this is nothing.
Well, people kept showing up and they're like, yeah, all right, well, maybe the next one.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, yeah, Terminator did huge business. This is the point where I'm going to do a pivot. This is one of the most successful R-rated movies of all time. At the time, it was the most successful R-rated movie. Actually, if you adjust for inflation, its domestic total still is the top-rated R-rated movie of all time. There have been movies that have domestically passed it that are R-rated, but if you take that inflated number, which domestically it was 205 million, which adjusts to 448 million, it beats the likes of Deadpool, it beats the likes of Passion of the Christ, which was weirdly a massive box office success.
That's a good movie.
Yeah. But yeah, massive movie and R-rated of all things.
I did have a question about the R rating. I can't remember. What was it rated R for?
There's a lot of violence in the movie.
Okay, I was gonna say I feel like it would be PG-13 these days.
No, not this one. There's impalements that are pretty
but
violent.
Look at Lord of the Rings. There's decapitations.
Yeah, no, I know. I actually think there's a few curse words in this too.
I agree.
I don't
with
think
this
there's an
does not
F
seem
word, though.
as bad as Lord of the Rings.
And there's actual blood and gore that you don't see in the other ones.
Okay, the rules though are kind of arbitrary, so it's kind of like they kind of went the wrong direction if they wanted to keep it PG-13, whereas other people can split the line differently.
Yeah. Anyway, AJ, I know you looked into this a little bit, but this came out at a weird time when R-rated movies were weirdly marketed towards kids. There's action figures for all of them, like RoboCop comes to mind. Were you able to look into this at all, or figured out or do you have like a list of movies at this time that were weirdly marketed towards children that should not have been?
Well, so this could not have been PG-13 because the PG-13 rating didn't start until like 1984. I think Red Dawn.
Oh yeah, you're right. Because Temple of Doom.
Yeah, and I think over half of all movies with an MPAA rating are rated R, like in the 50 whatever year history. But yeah, so RoboCop is one that comes to mind for sure. Mainly like lunchboxes, action figures, toys. Like they literally advertise at commercials on like Saturday morning cartoon channels and stuff.
Yeah.
Aliens,
Predator.
Yeah, Predator, AVP, even Starship Troopers. So like 70s, 80s, 90s really. I think PG-13 is, so these ratings and criteria have evolved over time, but PG-13's kind of taken the role of R light kind of. So, people have an idea and then they, tone it down a little bit to, get whatever rating lower with PG-13, and then you get more of a wide audience. But even now, like Deadpool comes to mind and stuff. So it's hard to put a fine line on it, but yes, like absolutely, like Terminator 2, RoboCop, Aliens, like all of those things were literally made, in the stores you go down the toy aisle, they're all over the place. Commercials. So it's just, that might be a reason why it's so even prevalent in pop culture, but if these companies find a way to make money off of it, they are. And scruples not necessarily.
It's so weird that an R rating, which I think is like 16 plus to watch.
Yeah.
Yet there's still, you can go to Walmart, Toys R Us, anywhere, find a Terminator action figure, or like, I guess another more modern example would be like Logan or Deadpool.
Yeah.
You can go find them. And it's it's almost this silent...
Even like Breaking Bad, like they made action figures for that, and there was big controversy about that. And
there is also the argument that adults may in fact buy these quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but not next to the the Barbies and the Hot Wheels or whatever. So
yeah, you find it in literally the kids section,
yeah,
like
the
the 6+ age kids section.
Yeah, that is interesting.
It's like,
I agree.
And more recently, it was PG-13, but the Batman, that movie, I do not think is for kids at all.
No.
Yet there's like a whole section in Walmart where it's just the Batman toys, and I'm like, you're taking your 6-year-old to see this thing? It's so funny, this, like, what's the handshake between these two, where it's like, oh, you can't see this movie, but you can definitely buy this toy with this guy.
Well,
the handshake.
Yeah, and we've talked about this, or at least touched on it a little bit, where I think even like Leon the Professional, like we talked about, like as a society, we're uncomfortable with, I guess the sexual side of the relationship, but the violence and the killing is completely okay. Like, it's just kind of a social reflection on what is acceptable, what's not, and different countries are different. But
I just think it's so funny that we have this like almost pointless MPAA system applying ratings to these movies, and there's this secret acknowledgement that kids are watching these movies anyway, and that's why these toys are here, and the parents will buy them the toys because, oh yeah, they took them to see that movie. We all know that they've seen this movie. it's like what is the MPAA doing anyway? Like I don't know. It's interesting. And especially in the late 80s and the early 90s, RoboCop, by the way, is a movie that no kid should ever see.
Very violent.
Yet it was widely known to just have like all these toys that were associated with it.
Wow.
Like the RoboCop, there's like people's spines get ripped out in that movie. It's just so violent. But yeah, interesting. Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I would say this one's a light R rating. It's definitely like on the cusp there, but I still think it does just enough to justify being R rated. It's one of those movies that almost feels like intentionally R rated because it will like lure younger kids into the movie to feel like they've seen something that pushes the limits just slightly.
And you can kind of define or even quantify like violence or sex or language, or even tobacco, alcohol use. But I mean, even like say the opening credits of this, you have the playground on fire because like all that stuff. And like, it's not something you want a kid to be like they're going and playing on those playgrounds and stuff. And there's things now that are like called common sense media that they kind of go more in depth and discuss stuff a little bit more. So
it is so almost exactly on the same level as The Matrix for me, where they do the exact same thing. Same level of violence, same level of like slight language, sex, stuff like that. It's it's crazy. All right, moving on. We went through the box office there. Massive success. Despite its R rating, being one of the most successful R-rated movies of all time, maybe the most successful R-rated movie of all time. Franchise talk, guys. Obviously, this movie was a massive bomb, so no sequel, right?
Yep. Moving on.
Hydrogen.
Yeah, moving on. My biggest thing is like, how did it take this long for them to make a sequel? Like this franchise is such a slow burn. Like, you have the original in, 84, 86? It was some... I forget the original's year, but they took, like, 7 years to make the sequel to this one.
I think all you need to say about that is James Cameron.
Yeah, just they're waiting for him to come back on board. Yeah. So T2 took forever to be put into production. Actually, I think I do remember it was 84 for the first one. There was a 7-year break. T2 came out. There is going to be a further... so T3 is 2003. So there it's a 12-year break.
Wow.
Between sequels.
What was that, wrong.
AJ?
When I said that this couldn't have been rated PG-13, my times messed up. That was incorrect. But
yeah, PG-13 was 84 around Temple of Doom, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Temple of Doom was the one where they're like, okay, we got to have like a middle rating.
Yeah, that or Red Dawn, I think, was...
Yeah, Red Dawn, I think, was the first PG-13, maybe. Which, by the way, that just came out.
I just wanted to correct myself because I said something incorrect earlier.
Yeah, cool. Mm-hmm. All right, but yeah, it took them quite a long time, but they finally did get around to making a sequel to Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Which will, sorry, light on the franchise talk. Obviously, like, Terminator is still alive and well at this point, even though it took a very long time for this sequel to be put into production. We'll talk about the development and why it took so long in the next episode. But in the next episode, we will be talking about Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. The first movie in the Terminator franchise to not be directed by James Cameron, though I do think he is still involved in some capacity, at least as a producer. It's a Jonathan Mostow production. Terminator 3, 2003 release. Y'all excited for the third movie in the Terminator franchise?
Woo!
Yeah,
I think
don't know if I've
this
seen
is
it.
where I have dropped off the train. Yeah.
Do we have a clean sweep of, except for AJ, I know you mentioned you saw 3 earlier.
Oh, wait,
I have seen 3.
You have seen 3.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Lady Terminator, guys.
Oh, wait, no, I did. Yes.
Okay.
I remember
I've also
Lady
seen the one with
Terminator.
Christian Bale. whichever one that was.
That's the fourth one. That's Salvation.
Okay.
Salvation.
That's where I drop off.
Okay, cool.
No,
I'm
Genesis can
excited for this jumping off point here because I think the first two are solid for most people. Like, yeah, no question, these are good movies. Here is where we get interesting. There's people who are, there's defenders of 3, there's defenders of 4, there's defenders of, not Genesis, but there's defenders of...
There's no defenders.
Everyone's just like, not Genesis.
but there's defenders of Dark Fate, the latest one. So this is where we're really going, our paths, I think, will start to diverge, and some of us will, I feel like, maybe take to these sequels, and some of us may be like, man, it really should have ended it too. So this is where we'll really find out what the franchise is actually and how we feel about it. So Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines next week. We will see you guys. Goodbye.
Wait, no. You know how to end this. Hasta la vista, baby.
Hasta la vista, baby.